Clank isn't just one of the best-selling video game franchises of all time, it's one of PlayStation's longest running, and since 2002, it's been one of the most consistent parts of all of gaming other than sports games and Call of Duty, with 19 releases in 19 years on over 10 different platforms depending on how you count comic books and movie theaters. Just don't start getting weird and counting DVDs or Blu-rays or the movie's novel because nobody cares. It's also clearly my
Also, nobody cares about the remake, the 2016 one on PS4. That never happened.
favorite franchise of all time, and it's time to share that love. Over the coming weeks and months, let's take a deep, analytical tour through this franchise, game by game, and showcase why millions of players hold Ratchet and Clank in such high regard to highlight PlayStation's most prolific franchise. And first, it's time to show you...
Is it really, though? Is it really PlayStation's most prolific franchise? Because, not anymore. And to a certain degree, I don't think it was during the PlayStation 2 era either.
Why I hold the first Ratchet game so near to my heart. A game that undoubtedly changed my life nearly 2 decades ago when my parents randomly picked it out and bought it at a Walmart. But this isn't some rosy, nostalgic trip. We don't do that here. Every game gets the same level of scrutiny here on the Golden Bolt. And although I'm gonna heap a mountain of praise onto Ratchet and Clank, make no mistake, it's because the game deserves that praise and the criticism that's gonna come with it. This is a game that I love conditionally. It's a flawed game. It's the fantastic game that helped forge me into the player, the person, and the creator that I am today. This is Ratchet and Clank.
So, the ultimate retrospective. I really hope that the name is like actually fitting. But I don't know, at barely 1.5 hours, maybe. I guess we'll see. Although I really like his stupid intro, kinda.
If you didn't know any better, you might think today that a powerhouse like Ratchet and Clank just coasted to its release, as California-based developer Insomniac Games continued their momentum after releasing 3 acclaimed Spyro games in 3 consecutive years. But, believe it or not, Ratchet was actually the studio's 3rd attempt to break onto the PlayStation 2. After finishing Spyro 3, Insomniac's 4-game deal with Universal was up, and since the studio wanted to move on to a new IP, they began designing a game concept for Sony dubbed Monster Knight. The plan outlined an action-adventure game where the player would use different creatures as weapons and armor, best described as a hybrid of Zelda and Pokemon. By dungeon crawling and fighting enemies, these gear creatures would level up and
like, this is fine, but
it sounds like a novel concept, but this game never got past the initial designs.
I don't know. I think the backstory should maybe be a part of the video instead of just an introduction.
Because it was Insomniac's 5th game, is better known today as Girl with a Stick.
Like, it gets kind of boring to just sit through like pre-development.
Focusing on, you guessed it, a girl with a stick. Sony was very positive about this project,
like, what does this
but it soon
have to do with Ratchet and Clank?
Wasn't working out. It was very basic in its concept.
Granted, the video is kind of a part development deep dive, but like, there's probably better ways to do it, like integrate it into the video itself and bring it up when it actually makes sense for gameplay, because like, the girl with the stick gameplay is kind of similar to, you know, just Ratchet with his French, so.
The final straw came during a routine meeting with the producers at Sony, who, according to Price, said,
"If you guys want to release this, you can. We will support you. However, we don't think that there's going to be a market for this game." Had any publisher come in and said, "We don't like this game, we just don't like it, we're going to cancel it," we would have fought back hard. This way we had to kind of look inward and say, okay, well, they're telling us this, and wait, half of the team really doesn't like this game anyway, so they're right. we should do something different.
Within a few weeks, I-5 was gone, and what would become Ratchet and Clank began development. Even though Insomniac was now behind the curve, a more motivated team pushed through, and even before Ratchet and Clank released, it was already projected to be an overwhelming success. A sequel was greenlit 5 months before this game was even finished because focus testing was that positive. By the game's November 2002 release, Sony had unleashed a widespread marketing campaign with hilarious commercials showing off some of the game's weapons in a sort of Jackass style, and Sony was anticipating sales of well over 1 million copies. A month later, Ratchet and Clank was not only supposedly the first Western
sort of Jackass style? I love the commercials, but I don't know, just not exactly scream Jackass. It's more like kids playing with really dangerous stuff.
Game ever to break into Japan's top 100 weekly game sales charts. It was the first Western game to be published with a console in Japan ever. Reviews were positive, praising the game's gorgeous visuals, its at the time transformative gameplay, and most importantly, its ability to move past being just another 3D platformer in a bloating genre thanks to its creative arsenal of weapons and combat scenarios. That's the part you know first, of course, if you've never
oh god, get it away from me. Jesus.
Game before. It's the one with
you gotta have like some kind of trigger warning before you show clips of the 2016 remake.
Wacky weapons. It's the thing that Insomniac has essentially built its entire reputation around for most of its nearly 3 decades of existence. Even their first game before Spyro, the early PS1 shooter Disruptor, was full of awesome weapons. And this secondary focus on third-person shooter/adventure gameplay is what helped this franchise continue to exist and even thrive years after 3D platformers had started to fade away, because unlike its early PS2 contemporaries, Ratchet wasn't just an extension of traditional platformers. As Insomniac puts it, adapt or die. Just looking at other PlayStation titles here, the first Jak and Daxter game is often referred to as an open-world Crash game, and it received criticism for being on the shorter side. Another shorter platformer, Sly Cooper, has always felt to me like Crash Bandicoot 4, but with stealth, well, until Crash 4 became a real thing. Crash itself, despite being famously called Sonic's ass game by Naughty Dog, always felt like a 3-dimensional take on Donkey Kong Country to me. And Insomniac's own Spyro the Dragon was unquestionably, and by the studio's own admission, heavily inspired by Mario 64. Each of these games brought its own unique and awesome wrinkles to the genre as they were sewn onto this quilt of platformer history, but they all traced back to platforming's basic roots. Insomniac had been there and done that, and as Monster Knight and Girl with a Stick showed, they wanted to move into a more Zelda-esque adventure style rather than being just a platformer. So Insomniac did both. Ratchet and Clank became a hybrid of platforming and action-adventure combat, with 15 weapons for any imaginable situation, a handful of gadgets for solving puzzles and finding secrets, and a galaxy-wide crisis to avert. And on that crisis, Ratchet and Clank, like a game that's trying its hardest to stand out from the platformer crowd, opens up with a few minutes of cutscene across 2 different planets to act as dressing before you can even touch the controller. Well, before that, it opens up with just one of my favorite title screens out there. I can't believe I'm going to spend a minute talking about title screens, but if I'm going to be ballsy enough to call this the ultimate retrospective, you can be damn sure I'm turning over every rock I can.
Yes. The title screen is like one of the best openings. Actually, it's probably the title screen in Ratchet and Clank 1 is probably the best opening in any of the Ratchet and Clank games. Just because of, like, you know, it's the night before. Actually, Ratchet and Clank 3 has something similar, where he's like tinkering with the Blargian warp engine or whatever, but like yeah, it's really one of the better ones. Kind of miss the days where this was more the norm.
This moment here, a serene nighttime shot of Ratchet all alone on this planet, just working on his dinky little spaceship, his ticket towards chasing his dreams, towards exploring that galaxy. It's all so simple, but man, it just hits. It's one of the first images that comes to mind when I think of this series, and if you think about it, it's the perfect establishing shot for what would become Ratchet's character over the next 400 games. But after that, we get our setup.
Yes. And no? I mean, I don't know. Like, after having played through the 3 first ones again, recently, I don't know, I don't remember, I'm not as familiar with the PlayStation 3 and onwards, but like, it kind of feels like Ratchet loses a bit of his character from 2 and onwards. Like, he's not that much of a tinkerer. Like, they kind of pick it up a little bit in 3. But then they're, like, kind of totally forget it in Gladiator. Or Deadlocked. Or whatever you want to call it.
On his homeworld of Veldin, Ratchet puts the finishing touches on his ship, only to need one final part, a robotic ignition system, the actual keys to his ship. At the same time, on another planet, Clank is born, or made, a defective model of war robot that somehow turned out much smaller. And you know what they say, size matters. Before he can be decommissioned, though...
It's a very good joke.
Clank sees a horrifying video on this little infobot and decides that he needs to escape and blow the whistle. Our infant robot makes it into a ship and into space, but is shot down in Veldin's orbit right near Ratchet's garage thing. Does he sleep in that garage? Like, where does he live? What's going on there? Whatever. It's not like he's gonna tell us, because this entire intro is told without any dialogue from our 2 heroes, partly to play on the whole platformer protagonists are silent trope, and partly because these scenes were produced before the actors were actually cast and brought in. Even without any dialogue, these cutscenes are more than enough to distinguish this game's early tone from, say, your Mario 64s, and now we can start playing as Ratchet decides to check...
Wait, really? Were they made before the actors were brought in? Because, like, the very next cutscene after Clank's crash landing, we hear them talk, so... I don't know. I think it's probably... I'd love to see some sources on that, but it feels like it's more... It's meant to be more of a surprise element, right? Because at the time... the PlayStation 2 was a very new console, and voice acting in games wasn't that normal. Like, you usually had the silent protagonist. And it feels like it's kind of supposed to be surprise, voice acting, or something. I don't know.
Out that crash site. Well, okay, no, not yet. First, I have to change my camera controls. This is early PS2 after all. It took a little bit for camera controls to become normalized. So, in Ratchet 1, the heavy air quotes normal camera settings are what I would call inverted. When you push left on the right analog stick, Ratchet looks to his right, up is down, and so on. Without fail, every single time I start this game, I've got to pause once, change the horizontal camera, then unpause and realize, wait, no, I have to change the vertical camera too, pause, fix, and then I can play.
Yeah,
even when you start
that's
over in New Game
annoying.
Plus, the camera controls reset to these, again, heavy air quotes, normal settings. It's just amazing. I'm not complaining or anything, don't get me wrong, I just know for a fact
I get
that
confused
I'm
by
not
that
alone
all
on
the time
this
too.
one,
I'm
and
so
it
glad
always
they
makes me jump.
normalized it
This first
in
level is full of an interesting but
3.
unsuccessful combination of soft and hard tutorials. Obviously, you've got your usual jumping challenges, a few of these fodder toad enemies to get used to Ratchet's trusty wrench attacks, and, of course, some crates to smash to pick up this universe's currency, bolts. But then, as you further explore this backwater desert planet, you come across these electroid robots that are designed to teach you how to use Ratchet's first weapon, the bomb glove. Except that if you're playing this game for the first time, or it's been a really long time since you played, you might not know or remember that you have this until a few moments later. Ratchet isn't holding it when he starts, so unless you press circle by accident or just to see what it does, you're going to be going through with your wrench anyway until the Gadgetron Help Desk tutorial pops up to tell you that, hey, you can use the bomb glove and keep your distance against enemies. The game attempts these tutorial moments quite a bit throughout, and I find it pretty interesting. Like, you can oh so clearly tell that they were still getting their bearings and really trying to experiment with outside-the-box weapons, finding unique ways to use them all and combine their effects together, all while eventually having to nudge you to outright tell you how some of it works, in this case, a few minutes later than they should have. For example, I don't know.
It feels like that's kind of supposed to, like, it's supposed to be like that, because you go around with your wrench and then, oh wow, I can't believe I have to do this, and then they tell you about the bomb glove with it, which is like objectively the best weapon in the game, right? Which lets you attack from across the chasm.
This platform here was meant as a bomb glove tutorial until a developer commentary mentioned it, and I've beaten this game probably 40 to 50 times. In a way, this
oh, never mind. He actually mentioned the right. I forgot about that.
Game that has all of the pieces here, just not all in the right order.
So it's kind of weird that they don't tell you about the bomb glove.
Can be turned off or skipped at any time if you don't want them there. But I like to leave them on because they're harmless and they add a little bit of world building. I mean, come on, a pleasant female voice helping you out, all while further tying you to a massive tech corporation? That's just super unrealistic. But I kind of find it charming here, right, Alexa?
Please stop talking to me. I've told you that I despise your stupid face and your receding hairline. Do not contact me again, or else.
I don't know where any of that came from. Wow, that was really mean. Once Ratchet reaches the crash site, he grabs Clank and takes him back home, or garage. And while Ratchet's working on his ship, we get the first dialogue between the two.
Interesting.
And we find out why Clank escaped, so that he could try and stop this man, Chairman Drek, from harvesting chunks of other planets to build a new luxury homeworld for his species, the Blarg. Drek's plan is equal parts evil and hilarious, thanks in part to Drek's condescending tone.
Using highly sophisticated technology, which you couldn't possibly understand.
And Ratchet's response to it.
The people on those planets are hosed. Well, good luck getting Captain Quark to help you.
I love how this game introduces Drek. It pretty much sets the tone for the entire series' trademark snark. Like, I can quote this entire intro here verbatim. It's that seared into my mind. Although Ratchet is hesitant at first, Clank strikes a deal with his new pal. Clank will use his function as a robotic ignition system to allow Ratchet to start and pilot his ship if Ratchet helps Clank find the heroic Captain Quark to put a stop to Drek's plans. And with that, the journey begins. Clank gets his nickname.
I'll just call you Clank for short.
Quark is teased as being on Drek's side because
what was that?
Stop to Drek's plans. And with that, the journey begins. Clank gets his nickname.
I'll just call you Clank for short.
Oh, hello. That's funny. And you know that's gonna haunt him too, right? If he noticed it, like later, that 1 second, that one frame that he didn't edit away, or that carried over.
Quark is teased as being on Drek's side because of course he is, and then Ratchet crashes the ship and they both die.
And that's the video, guys.
With the tutorial out of the way, this planet Novalis is where we get that first taste of Ratchet's loosely Zelda-inspired design. Almost every planet in this first game has...
Is it loosely Zelda-inspired, though? I mean... that would be like calling Mario Zelda-inspired just because you go through levels. Like... I don't know. It feels like too general of a statement, right? Because Darksiders, right? That's obviously Zelda inspired because you have the items and the dungeons and everything, but I don't think you can say that Ratchet and Clank is any like sort of Zelda inspired.
multiple paths that you can travel down in whatever order that you wish, and these just about always loop back organically to the duo's starting point, so that once you're done with one section, you can start right off on the next one immediately. Often one path will act as a combat challenge, while another will act either as a platforming section or use some of this game's puzzle gadgets.
Yeah, that's one of the best things about the first game. They did this a bit in the second, and then they just kind of threw it in the trash for the future games, except maybe not Tools of Destruction, but wow, I'm completely forgetting the title, but like the last real Ratchet and Clank game for the PlayStation 3, the Back to the Future, I want to say, game, but I think that also had some different paths you can take within the level. 3 actually has some, but 3 is more of a like battleground and arena game than it is an actual Ratchet and Clank game, which is, god damn, I'm so pissed off that that's the way they went with it.
Here on Novalis, you're pretty clearly nudged to go forward onto the ravaged battleground and get into some fights, but I always like to go back through the secret third path directly behind where you begin.
Hey,
That's
yeah,
where
me
you can
too.
Get acquainted with this game's swimming mechanics. There are some enemies and crates that you can smash to get some extra money, and the first of this game's hidden collectible, the Gold Bolt. Take note, these, gold bolts. This, the golden bolt. Legally distinct, don't get me sued, please. I go back this way first mainly to get the extra bolts, because that way by the time I come back through, I'll have enough to visit this Gadgetron vendor right here and buy our second weapon, the Pyrocitor Flamethrower. Not every planet will end up unlocking a new gun in this shop here, but generally whenever a new one shows up, it's probably best suited for that coming level, and that's definitely the case for the Pyrocitor on Novalis. While the Bomb Glove is great for taking down enemies from a longer distance, the Pyrocitor is perfect for wiping out swarms of enemies like these little ankle biters here. Just remember to buy some more ammunition before you drop down, because in Ratchet 1 for some reason, whenever you buy a weapon, Gadgetron only gives you at most half of your max ammo. For some guns, you only get like 30%. Way to cut corners, Gadgetron. At the end...
Yeah, the Pyrocitor is like objectively the best weapon in the game, so like it coming with half the ammunition makes sense because it's so overpowered. Not to be confused with the other objectively best weapon in the game, the Bomb Glove, of course.
Into this path, Ratchet and Clank save Novalis' mayor from an assault by Drek's troopers, and in return, the mayor gives the duo the coordinates to another planet where Captain Quark was recently seen filming a commercial.
Yeah, Captain Quark is really sold out.
The mayor also loans them his personal courier.
I mean, I guess.
Ship since Ratchet kind of totaled his ride back there, and I just want to note that Ratchet and Clank never give this ship back. Like, they find other ships to use later, and they leave this one behind forever, jerks. We're not done with Novalis just yet, though, as there's one more path that players won't notice as they ride the elevator.
He kind of tried to kill them.
At the end of this more platforming-focused route, we meet the one, the only...
Look, plumber's crack.
What did you just say?
I said,
look, the plumber's back.
The plumber here is also our first instance of the early game's love of forcing you to pay in-game money to unlock progress, as he trades Ratchet his infobot for 500 bolts for bus fare. So now we've got two choices of where to go, two new planets that we can visit in whichever order we want to do, but we're going to go with the planet-sized city of Metropolis first. This level is not only the first one that the team designed, and the reason that Ratchet even got greenlit for production in the first place, it's easily one of, if not the most iconic area in the entire franchise. Metropolis's scope, its surprising level of detail, even way off in the distance, the atmosphere of all the cars flying through traffic.
The details way off in the distance? Like, do you mean these blocky fucking houses here? I don't know, maybe... I don't want to say it's even, like... good for the PlayStation 2 era, but then again, this is a early one, right?
traffic above and below you. It's always a place where I try to stop and take it in for just a moment. Part of the reason
it is really
Insomniac was
cool,
able
but
to
it's
capture
like
such high fidelity at
I don't know.
long distances was thanks to their local office mates, Naughty Dog. It's often misreported that Ratchet 1 runs on Naughty Dog's engine, which isn't at all the case, really. Early on in development, Naughty Dog shared some of its rendering tech with Insomniac, written in a programming language known as Lisp that only one Naughty Dog designer even understood. One of Insomniac's designers took this code and rewrote it in the much more understandable C language, and after the team added some tweaks and improvements, they passed it back over to Naughty Dog to continue sharing the tech back and forth. Somewhere along the way, the story seems to have become the telephone game, and Naughty Dog unintentionally got the credit for Ratchet even existing. You can kind of tell that after 20 years of hearing that, it might bother Insomniac just a little bit, because they seem to correct it every single time it's brought up now. Whoever was responsible, this level is just gorgeous, and it's one of many times where this game's crisp visuals really stand out. Like before, we've got two paths here in Metropolis. On the left is a platforming obstacle course where we meet Quirk's obese personal trainer Helga, who's somehow an alien that looks like a robot and is also German?
The two of you make me sick!
And again, we have to pay to
I
progress
think she's
by buying
actually
the
just a
slingshot
robot,
gadget
actually.
from her because Ratchet was apparently too slow. On the right is another combat-focused section, this time a trek through the city, where we have to pay to unlock Clank's iconic hover pack ability. Now, thankfully, Ratchet 1's economy is almost perfectly balanced so that if you explore every nook and cranny, you break every single crate, and you defeat every single enemy, you should have just enough bolts to buy everything right about when it appears. But if you're not thorough, you'll sometimes have to choose between buying a weapon early in the level or holding off just in case somebody's going to make you pay them for info.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing about the game, and I think this is very prevalent in the second one as well. You're locked out of progressing in the game because you need to pay to continue. But and like you get all the bolts you need, probably, like you said, if you're thorough. Even for weapons, if you buy all the weapons, you will probably have enough bolts to progress, right, at any point. In 3, they don't do that at all. In 3, instead, they have these really, really costly weapons that you will probably go multiple planets without being even able to think of affording. Which sometimes makes them outdated. So I much prefer the way they did it in the first two games, where you usually ask the weapon, or in this case, the progression points appear where you have to pay. You have usually just enough bolts.
Generally, I actually recommend you hold off for a bit, because while Ratchet's arsenal of weapons is decent, the gunplay itself is not. Something that the team realized slightly too late into development, according to former Insomniac developer Mike Stout, is that they probably should have added a strafing mechanic. In this game, and only in this game, as far as the
probably should have added.
Ratchet
They did
cannot
add a
lock
strafing
onto enemies when
mechanic,
he's
but
aiming
it's
his
like
gun,
unlocked
least not
at the end of the
directly.
game.
Almost every weapon
And it
will
sucks.
automatically train its cursor towards one of the nearby enemies, but weapons like the blaster that's introduced here in Metropolis often struggle to hit exactly where you want them to. This
The
little
blaster
automatic pistol has
isn't
bullets that try
bad,
to home in on
right?
enemies.
Because it's a mid-range weapon. Mid to long, I guess, and it has a slight homing function, and you also get a reticle for the enemy you're trying to target. So it's not supposed to be used in close combat like you see him do a lot here, and it's also supposed to be aimed, right? Like if you're on a platform with a melee enemy on the other side, you can aim it and shoot them, kill them before you jump over. Because Ratchet and Clank 1 is more about utilizing the weapons the right way. You're not supposed to run around and gun everything down in like just a big fucking shootout, right? You're supposed to think about what you're going to do, and then you're gonna choose the right weapon for that job. Most of the time.
But the angle of the bullet's curve sometimes isn't strong enough to do so. For example, during the train section at the end of this very level. If you take your time in each level and you don't mind zooming into first-person mode for more precise
the
aiming,
train section is
also
just
being a sitting
just
duck while
not
doing so,
good.
this
The
gameplay
physics
style
doesn't work
is
on it.
serviceable, but there's a reason that Ratchet and Clank has always had this weird hump for new players, and it's because this first game just has not aged well compared to the series' evolution since.
Yeah, but like it's a learning curve, right? And it's not really that steep. If you can't hit stuff with the blaster, then don't use it. Use the Pyrocider, or even better, the objectively best weapon in the game, the Bomb Glove.
If you're in one of the many sections of this game where multiple enemies are thrown at you, sometimes in relatively close quarters, you don't have the chance to take your time and pick out the right weapon or strategy.
Yeah, you do. You just pause the game.
Since your quick select wheel doesn't pause the game while you're selecting.
No, you literally just press start and pause the game and go into the weapons menu. It's not that hard.
Now you can always just actually pause the game in a pinch.
Oh yeah, look, yeah,
And take a moment to get your bearings, select the right strategy, whatever you want to do, but that can break the gameplay's pace. So when...
But like, what's the difference between pausing and going into the menus and having the quick select get paused? Like, I get it. It's like one button press less. 2, maybe. But like, I don't see the problem. Also, the quick select is like fine, honestly, because you usually know where you have the weapons on it, so you just basically hold it for half a second, choose the weapon, then let go, and then you have it equipped. Also, it's the double triangle press, which lets you switch between 2 weapons.
Most players are in those moment-to-moment pinches. They either flail around in circles, spraying their weapon wildly across the battlefield, or they just press square and start using the wrench. Let's compare a high-tension scenario from the first game to its sequel, which, remember, came out almost exactly 1 year later. Even somebody like me, who's beaten this game countless times and has unintentionally discovered speedrun strategies and exploits, doesn't tend to look like they know what they're doing in Ratchet 1, where, in any of the future games, the ability to strafe, the ability to flip to the side to avoid enemy fire, and the ability to lock onto enemies makes the game far less disorienting for the player, and as a result, it also looks like a far more fun game to an untrained eye watching it.
First of all, the bridge section is not fun. The bridge section in Ratchet and Clank 2 is not fun. Second of all, you can't play Ratchet and Clank 1 as if you're playing Ratchet and Clank 2. Like, I get what he's trying to say, but it's like you need to know the strengths and the weaknesses of the game you're playing. You can't just, like I said, run around and just shoot everything like you would in a different game. You need to choose the right weapon for the job. He was using like the Glove of Doom. Who uses the Glove of Doom? Like, you could easily use the blaster there, or the Tesla claw I think you have unlocked when you were going that way. I think, probably not. Probably not. Never mind. But you have so many options.
Most enemies, even those later in the game, have low health to compensate for the weapon's finicky aiming and the fact that weapons don't level up and get stronger like they do later in this series. Ratchet's trusty wrench is always a viable and, more importantly, a cheaper alternative. In fact, it's possible to beat this entire game using only the wrench if you're absolutely insane. Where in later games, the wrench usually gets outclassed later.
Yeah, like, none of the enemies really have much more health. Like, the commandos, the flying commandos, they have a bit more health, but like usually the health levels, the enemies' health stay relatively the same throughout the whole game. You get a slight increase in difficulty, but it's more in a way where they can now suddenly shoot you from really far away, or they're just kind of more powerful, even though you usually just lose 1 hit point when you get hit. And that's like, I don't know, it doesn't have the problems that 2 have, for example, where enemies suddenly get way too powerful or have way too much health for your first weapon to even do any damage.
Later on, here it'll kill most enemies in the game in just a few hits, so long as you're spry enough to avoid taking damage yourself. But when the alternative is firing guns that have questionable hit rates and maybe taking that damage anyway, there's good reason to go with the more reliable outcome. Now that's not to say that Ratchet 1 isn't fun, of course. I still adore this game, and there are plenty of moments where this gameplay style works out beautifully, mostly when it's trying to be a platformer, funnily enough. That's just one part of why my love for this game is somewhat conditional. As my dad told me before he found a new family, you can love something and still want it to be better.
What?
That's just one part of why my love for this game is somewhat conditional. As my dad told me before he found a new family, you can love something.
Why is that in... I don't know why he didn't just write it out normally. But,
and still want it to be better. And the thing is, it's these stumbles that ensured that Ratchet still exists today. Insomniac designed Ratchet and Clank 1 as a platformer adventure game hybrid in that order, but with its sequel onward, that order would crucially flip. They would...
Sadly, yes, it would.
Become adventure/third-person shooters first and platformers second. In other words, adapt or die. It's no coincidence that the other 2 of the PS2's holy trinity of platformers became less and less confined in the platformer genre, as Sly moved into a more open-world adventure game approach, and Jack turned into a bad a more GTA-styled action game. Where the game stumbles mechanically, though, again, that atmosphere and the humor of most of these characters more than makes up the difference. Even if you hate Ratchet's weapon mechanics, you're almost certainly going to want to see what the next planet holds, because even across 18 different levels, each one finds a way to feel completely distinct. Aridia, for example, that other planet we passed over earlier, is fittingly named as an arid desert, and yet it feels, pardon the pun, night and day when placed next to the similarly dry Veldin, thanks to the architecture of this mining facility here, the deep navy blues used for the skybox and the rocky terrain, and the iconic soundtrack work by composer David Bergeaud. While there are other tracks that are easier to immediately associate as the Ratchet song, there's something about Aridia's score during my most recent run of the game that stuck out to me the most, and I think it's just me remembering once again that Ratchet and Clank, this first game, has a soundtrack unlike any other piece of media that I can think of. Bergeaud just flawlessly combined that late 90s electronic aesthetic with some hard bass lines, an engaging but alien rhythm, and fine-tuned each track to whatever pieces of concept art or level demos that he was working with. If I didn't know any better, I would think that his tracks inspired the planets just as much as they inspired the songs. One thing I love
Actually, yeah, that's a good point. The soundtrack is like, it's almost, I don't know, yeah. It's almost like the levels are made around it. Or the levels are made around the soundtrack. It's actually a really good point, now that I think about it. Because it feels like that's how they did it, almost.
This game's score is that just about every planet's opening track leads you in with around 30 seconds of hook, giving you that immediate and permanent impression. When you think of a Ratchet and Clank 1 planet, that opening stinger is usually gonna be what plays first in your mind. And perhaps unintentionally, I'm not really sure frankly, but let's assume this was a genius design decision, this nudges the player to take a second, just a moment, to survey these sprawling landscapes and absorb each planet's vibe, to make you appreciate the work that's gone into every planet before the song starts to drop. More of the rhythmic electronic instrumentation starts coming in, and the track drives you forward to your objectives at hand. It can't be a coincidence that your first view of most planets is usually a wide shot of the architecture or terrain, perfectly timed to these songs' low-key opening moments. It's as if every piece of this game is working in synergy to beg you to just pan that right stick around for just a bit, like you're every E3 demo presenter in history.
Yeah, you know, it's pretty obvious that this is what they were going for, right? Because the game does look very good. Even though I don't particularly like the distance stuff of Metropolis, like Iridia and Calibo 3 and those planets, like, they look so good, and it makes sense that they want to show it off, right? I really like it.
The game's sequel leans into this even more, establishing several distinct camera angles to highlight a planet's scope, theme, atmosphere, and yes, soundtrack, so clearly the Insomniac crew knew they were onto something in this first game. Circling back to Iridia, this level's got another 3 paths, one of which requires the swing shot that we got back in Metropolis, while the other 2 are where we meet pro hoverboarder Skid McMarx and his sleazy agent. By helping Skid get back to his ship, Ratchet receives a hoverboard that we're gonna need later on. The swing shot course rewards Ratchet with the trespasser
I really
gadget
miss
that will
the
unlock
hoverboard
certain doors
races.
after a little puzzle challenge, which Ratchet conveniently needs for the following planet, Eudora. And if we come back after beating Blackwater City's hoverboard race again a bit later on, Sid's agent at the end of the 3rd path will give us an optional item called the Sonic Summoner.
No. Wrong Sonic.
Oh god, no, put it back! You might be noticing a pattern by now, that Ratchet and Clank 1 likes to ask players to jump back and forth between the different planets depending on the order they play in. If I had gone to Iridia first, for example, the help desk lady would kindly inform me that I'm unable to access the swing shot path and that I would have to come back here later to get through it. Likewise, if I went to the next planet without the trespasser, I would have to come back here to Iridia to get it, but I might not even realize that right away because the progression path here on Eudora is actually hidden off to the left. What may look like the main path, taking you through Executive Chairman Dreck's logging operation for his Frankenstein planet, is actually totally optional, granting Ratchet and Clank the Suck Cannon, a vacuum weapon that can suck up small enemies and shoot them back out as projectiles.
Suck! Suck! Suck!
Usually the game does a pretty decent job of guiding you and
okay, that's
reminding you
pretty
if you're missing something.
good reference.
And every
I
planet
wish
has
I
a
made that
checklist of
reference
objectives
when
you're
talking
in the
about the
ship
suck
in case
cannon.
you do miss something. But it's
Even though it
like
really
this,
sucks.
and
Like, it
especially one
honestly,
that I'll
the
touch
suck
on
cannon
later, that
sucks
sort of
ass.
give this game a light
I can't
Metroidvania
believe
vibe.
they actually brought back the suck cannon in 3, and it's a weapon you have to buy. Oh my god, I had completely forgotten about that, and when like I saw it pop up in the Gadgeton vendor, I died a little bit inside.
Where progression leads to backtracking to unlock a new item so you can progress further. Most of this game does aim its eyes forward, but there's just enough of this looking backward in between these sections, and optional gadgets that it can sort of, kind of, if you squint, check off that box for satisfying search action gameplay as well. The main path on this logging planet is another—
Wait, huh? Hang on.
Kind of, if you squint, check off that box for satisfying search leads to backtracking to unlock a new item so you can progress further. Most of this game does aim its eyes forward, but there's just enough of this looking backward in between these sections, and optional gadgets that it can sort of, kind of, if you squint, check off that box for satisfying search action gameplay as well.
Well,
the main path on this logging planet is another
I don't know. I'd say all the paths you can take are pretty clearly presented to the player. So, calling it a search action game, I don't know.
swing shot section that results in the best boss fight in series history.
You sure showed him.
Leading our duo to the next point of interest, Dreck's research station.
Did you see all the cool gadgets they're making? Let's go get some.
No.
In addition to this level featuring Ratchet causing billions of dollars in property damage, Gadgetron trying to sell you a weapon that's just an air horn, like it actually does no damage at all, it just annoys enemies.
Dude, the Taunter is like objectively the best weapon in the game.
Though you can make them do this. And paying a lab tech for some sick grind boots, this research station is the first time that Clank is playable solo, and, well, let's just say this series has struggled since day one to make the Clank sections interesting in my opinion. Compared to Ratchet, Clank's movement speed drags, and the main gimmick when playing as him is that Clank can use his mind to control these little Gadgetbots, commanding them to follow him, wait, attack enemies, or act as keys to open a door.
Does robots have minds?
I don't have a problem with the Gadgetbots themselves. The main issue for me is that if any of them die, they'll respawn back where Clank found them and wait as you slowly plod back over to reactivate them, only for the very next room to have more enemies.
Clank sections are easily the worst part.
Clank can always attack too, of course, but
especially like the long one on Planet Oxen.
To work with, and if you die as Clank, you can expect to start all the way back at the beginning. Better to deal with the slow backtracking than have to start over entirely. Now that I think about it, I guess fittingly, given how slow he is, both of the Clank sections in this first game end up with Clank finding the two gadgets that also slow down the pace the most, which, man, they really don't want you to play as Clank in this game. This first one is the Hydro Displacer, a gadget that can suck up, hold, and deposit massive pools of water in specific areas. And also, fun fact, the Hydro Displacer was apparently conceptualized by Mark Cerny when he was helping produce this game. I'm only saying this to show you another picture of Dana Carvey, because these two are the same person, I swear to God, and I need more people to know this. You really only use the Hydro Displacer a handful of times because, frankly, it's just not that fun to use. The early Ratchet games tend to throw a bunch of shallow gimmick ideas at you in the form of gadgets that don't hold up for more than 1 or 2 repetitions, and this is definitely one of those growing pains.
Oof, and especially
in Blackwater City sewers,
like that
right
is
before the
horrible
section that gave
with all
every
the
child nightmares
gadgets.
as water rushes in on Ratchet and will drown him if you don't escape with what can feel like near perfect timing. You'll use it on the next planet as part of Quark's training course to test Ratchet and Clank's abilities. There are 2 optional areas that use it in the middle of the game, one of which is just an abridged version of Ocarina of Time's Water Temple, and you'll use it one more time at the very end of the game, like twice. It's pretty, like, across 6 to 8 hours of gameplay, it gets 5 total uses. That's it. I don't know, just give me some more of those trespasser puzzles personally. I'm not fond of sucking up some water, jumping down, breaking a gate, going back up, refilling the water, and swimming through the gate. That's just not fun. It's here in Blackwater City that Ratchet and Clank finally meet Captain Quark, sort of twice. The main path takes you on an awesome tour through the evacuated city as you fight mutated amoeboids and the robotic pest control that are programmed to attack any living thing left in the city, resulting in some really fun chances at 3-way combat. At the end, Ratchet enters the hoverboard race to try and get a meeting with Captain Quark, only to win and receive a pre-recorded congratulations speech.
Let's give it up for newcomers!
Ratchet and Clank.
Hey look, that's us!
Ratchet, stay focused, idiot. It's only after almost drowning in the sewers and leaving Clank to rust on his back for
How come
eternity
they have
Ratchet
flying
finally
cars
meets Quark
and they don't
after being
have
forced to bribe a
good,
security
like,
guard to let him in?
voice
Again,
AI?
everybody in this galaxy stiffs you for money.
See how it works? You grease the hinges, the door opens.
Quark leads the duo to his training facility on planet Umbris through a deadly obstacle course that will have you asking why this game's checkpoints are so sparsely placed, before, of course, betraying the duo and dropping them into a pit.
Was it really that hard?
Quark leaves
Okay,
the
that's
duo
the
to die
third
against his pet.
credits fake out. Oh, I really stopped at a good time there.
Blargy and Snagglebeast, and we get our actual first boss fight here. Well, I guess second boss fight because there's the Alien Queen earlier, but you know what? Fuck you. The Snagglebeast is one of the clearest examples of this game's Zelda influence, a formulaic but exciting 3-phase encounter with an enemy that, for the most part, kind of telegraphs his attacks, poorly. The Snagglebeast has 4 main attacks: a slow stomp that spawns a shockwave, some fireballs that'll shoot at you if you get too close, a laser that he draws across the ground, and an attack that will suck out all of your ammo from every gun you have and spread it across the battleground. I say poorly because he doesn't exactly telegraph these attacks himself. It's more that he moves slowly enough that you'll always have enough distance to avoid 2 of those attacks and stop 2 of them from even occurring outright. When you're at a distance, you can quickly get into a pattern of sort of predicting which attack will come out, and all but the ammo suck come out slowly enough that you'll know where to move to avoid them. The laser, for example, doesn't hurt you itself, only the fire that comes out a moment later will cause damage. The most Zelda-esque part of this fight comes when you deal enough damage during each of the 3 phases, and the Snagglebeast erects an impenetrable barrier to chase you down until he crosses one of the arena's 3 bridges, which will then shatter under his weight and dunk him in the magma. The game doesn't tell you that's what you've got to do, so that probably could have been telegraphed a
I don't know, this is like the only boss battle that actually
it's
has...
It's not the most fun fight out there. Hell, it's trivial once you know what you're doing, but I still remember that feeling of fighting this behemoth for the first time when I was like 7 years old, not knowing what to do and kicking my brain into Zelda boss mode and figuring out the solution. It felt amazing. After the Snagglebeast takes a hot bath, we mark the
It's
end
not
of
very
the
intuitive that you
as Ratchet
need
takes
to
out all of his
lead him
anger
over
on
the
Clank
bridge.
for walking them into a trap,
Right.
and the two bicker like an old married couple. For most of the rest of the game from here on, Ratchet's just an unrelenting jerk to Clank, threatening to sell the robot for scrap, throwing unnecessary verbal jabs at him, turning a complete blind eye to Drek's evil plans, all in the name of getting petty revenge on Quark. It's just...
I don't know, okay, wait, hang on. What's the problem exactly? Because Ratchet wasn't actually on this quest to save anything. Right? He was just traveling the galaxy because that's what he wanted to do. Maybe pick up some cool gadgets and weapons along the way. The only thing Ratchet really agreed to was to find, or rather lead Clank to Quark so he could warn him about the imminent danger. So when Quark then literally drops them into a lava pit and sends a giant monster to kill them, is it that hard to believe that Ratchet would be kinda pissed off?
Hard to actually like this version of Ratchet as a character once you put aside nostalgia.
I don't know, it's not that he's unlikable, he's more like relatable. Like, I mean, I don't love how he's like, how he is right here, but like, it's relatable. I get pissed too. And like, it is kind of funny, all the insults and back and forth between them.
One, he's got that early 2000s edgy, aloof vibe going on, and that works fine enough. But if the goal of this game is to bring this buddy cop duo together through strife, there are far better ways to put the two at odds that don't involve making them actively hate each other for over half of the game.
What? It's like maybe a third, right? Because it's like it's the like it's that planet. And then it is Battalia, Pokitaru, and a bit of Orkson. And there's not really like up until you get to the city, the Lightning City, which I completely forgot the name of. It's not that many cutscenes in between either, and if there are cutscenes, they're very short. I don't know. I never really got why people don't like this part of the story, because it makes sense.
It's hard to see at times why Clank would ever want to hang out with Ratchet after this journey's over, except for the fact that he knows literally nobody else in the galaxy.
Yeah, but like, that's why it's like a third of the game, right? Because there's something after. Like, they become friends again.
And the thing is, Clank gets development during these moments as an actual fucking newborn that learns quickly not to naively believe in heroic figures, while still pushing to do what's right for people whenever possible. The only lesson that Ratchet learns by the end of the game is that, oh, yeah, Clank was right, Drek was the issue here, not the big green buffoon. And the cherry on top is that Ratchet's character isn't even consistent from this point on. Some scenes will have him back to his more casual early game demeanor.
What do you have in there?
Gears, metal filings, dust.
You know what I mean. What is it?
And then the very next scene has him back to being a dick.
Yeah, and maybe the salt water will rust your mouth shut.
Depending on how you play the game...
Yeah, but like... I don't know. It kind of feels like he's misinterpreting. But like, it's not that clear, right? But it's more like... He is, Ratchet is kind of like, okay, show me what you've got. Let's see, right? And then in the cutscene he's referring to afterwards,
Dust.
You know what I mean. What is it?
And then the...
Yeah, Ratchet wants to go to Poketaru and pick up that HO2 helmet. And then Clank says that there are more important stuff to be done, and then says that maybe the extra oxygen will help your brain to function properly, which Ratchet retorts to. So like, this cutscene is taken out of context.
Very next scene has him back to being a dick.
Yeah, and maybe the salt water will rust your mouth shut.
Depending on how you play the game, those two scenes will most likely play back to back. Let's just say there were some clear growing pains with Ratchet in this game. Critics noticed it seems like players noticed it, Insomniac certainly noticed it, and by the time Ratchet and Clank Going Commando came out a year later, Ratchet's voice had been recast to James Arnold Taylor, who remains in the role to this day. In short, Ratchet's edges had been so sharp that they somehow actually punctured this game's quality, so they were sanded down a bit. His paper-thin personality gained a few more pages. We ended up with a much better character and a better friendship with Clank.
Wait, hang on. You can't possibly suggest that Ratchet's personality in 2 and onwards is any better, right? Like, Ratchet and Clank 1 Ratchet actually has some depth to him. 2 is just, I'm gonna save the galaxy. And maybe has some slightly snarky comments along the way, but it's like, I don't know. Ratchet from 2 and onwards feels very shallow, especially during the PS2 era.
And only a very vocal minority online is still, for some reason, mad about it. That this second act kinda sucks story-wise is a shame, because it takes away from probably the most interesting act mechanically and atmospherically. This is the section of the game that has that sort of, kind of backtracky Metroid angle to it that I mentioned earlier, as the first 5 of these 6 planets each
no, not really.
have either an optional collectible that you'll need to bring elsewhere for a bonus upgrade, or an upgrade that itself is required for progression on another one of these 5 planets. This backtracking first begins on the rainy, war-ravaged planet Battalia, where Ratchet and Clank are drafted against their will to defend it from Drek's militia. Huh. I thought Clank had bone spurs. Although earlier on in development, this planet was a much brighter, sunny day that was kind of tonally disconnected with the story surrounding it, this finished version of Battalia that we get to play is a fitting tone setter for the rest of the game, with its dark...
Why are you using the Pyrocider on these guys?
Atmosphere, its stronger groups of enemies, and heavier, more booming background music. If we follow the commando on the main path across the battlefield, we'll hit a wall most of the way through the level because we don't have the Magna Boots that are needed to reach the other side of this gap here. You know, unless you just do one of these.
Huh, that's fun. Still has some Magna Boots, though.
Conveniently, the commando gives Ratchet and Clank an infobot for the Blarg's polluted homeworld of Orxon, which is where we're going to find those Magna Boots. But honestly, it doesn't really matter if you come back here later, because the commando just kind of leaves anyway, and the only thing on the other side of this bridge is another conversation with the plumber, so...
Wait, the only thing? The conversations with the plumber are objectively the best things about Ratchet and Clank 1.
Be kind of worth it. And the optional metal detector, which can find spare change...
And the metal detector sucks.
buried underground. There is another path tucked off to the right by the duo's ship at the start, a grind rail path where, at the end, Ratchet and Clank find, and then, of course, pay a deserting soldier for the coordinates to the Blarg research station on another planet, Gaspar. No matter which path you choose first, though, you are going to run into some of Ratchet's snide remarks. That's just inevitable for this whole chunk of the game, so get used to it.
Speak for yourself and put your hands down. You look ridiculous.
When it comes to Planet
But come on, it's funny.
Orxon, Drek wasn't lying. The polluted air here on the Blarg homeworld is simply too toxic for Ratchet to breathe in, so for now, Clank slowly moseys through one of the Blarg facilities by himself and grabs both the Magna Boots and shortly afterwards an infobot for the beachy resort planet Poketaru, which advertises an oxygen mask that could allow Ratchet to explore the rest of this polluted nightmare planet. You know how I said earlier how Clank's contributions in this game end up accidentally and fittingly giving us two of Ratchet's slowest gadgets? Well, the Magna Boots are exactly that. In Ratchet 1, these Magna Boots, whose name, by the way, is a portmanteau combining boots and PlayStation 3 shooter Mag, allow Ratchet to walk up specific magnetic platforms and pathways, but only at a speed that would make Clank look like Sonic, leaving Ratchet a sitting duck for enemies like these birds. Since Ratchet can only use his wrench while he's on a Magna Boot track, and since he can't jump because, you know, heavy magnet feet, you've got no evasive options here besides mash, square, and hope, and you've got no range unless you throw the wrench, which in this game stops Ratchet from moving at all until the wrench slowly boomerangs back to his hand, so you're a sitting duck again anyway. This, thankfully, is the only time the game tries combining combat and the Magna Boots, because otherwise that could have been a disaster.
Hey look, this is why the Tundra is objectively the best weapon in the game.
Gaspar, meanwhile, is one of the only planets besides probably
Good to hear.
Dora that we could consider filler in this game.
What better way to spend a Saturday than chilling?
One of only 10 levels remastered 1-to-1 in 2016's PS4.
Oh God,
game. It's
please put up a trigger warning before you show clips of this game.
That's a story for another day, though. There's one main path here.
Actually, fun fact, I got to
filler in this game, which hilarious.
I got to this part in the 2016 version, and I just straight up quit.
Game. It's the only one in that game where a significant new area was added to that level. That's a story for
that was
another
it.
Day, though.
I haven't
There's
gotten
one
past
main path here in this version of this level, and 2 bonus paths that'll give you gold bolts, with that main route granting Ratchet the pilot's helmet, which will let him pilot certain ships. This is meant to refer to Blarg fighter ships specifically, but theoretically this might mean that Ratchet could ditch Clank right here if he wanted to so badly, but he doesn't. The pilot's helmet is required on Poketaru, because even after the duo escorts the resort's sleazy tour guide through hordes of mutated creatures, he refuses to give up the O2 mask until they clear the air of the Blarg ships that are polluting his resort using his luxury air fighter. Of course, as is par for the course with this game, not before we have to spend money, because Ratchet has to pay Al's...
Actually, yeah, you're right. The gameplay isn't half bad, but like they butcher everything else. Like literally everything but the gameplay is horrible about that game.
Brother to equip Clank with the rocket-propelled hover pack upgrade, allowing them to open doors with a ground pound because we totally needed another gadget to open doors. We didn't have any one of those before. Now you may be noticing that outside of unintentional secondary bonuses like destroying part of Drek's fleet at the research station, which again, you don't have to, that's optional, this 30% or so of this game has no real mention of the main objectives. 1, stop Drek from destroying dozens of planets, or 1 if you're Ratchet, take down Quark. Up through the second visit to
kill
Ratchet, Act 2 is functionally a bunch of mandatory side questing. Get the infobots on Battaglia to get the Magna Boots and Pilot's Helmet.
Wait, hang on. What do you mean mandatory side questing? If it's mandatory, it's part of the main quest, isn't it?
Get the O2 mask to then be able to go back to Orxon and maybe finally get back on track. And keep in mind here, what I've described is the ideal scenario when playing through the game with the least possible amount of revisits. If a new player were to leave Orxon after grabbing the Magna Boots but before obtaining the infobot, or if you did both and then went to Poketaru before visiting Gaspar to get the pilot's helmet, or if you forgot to take the side path back on Battaglia to even unlock Gaspar, you could be adding several trips back and forth before you can finally return to Orxon as Ratchet with the O2 mask. Although I appreciate the extra bit of adventuring that this can create, and while this enhances that atmosphere of organic discovery and exploration, this is understandably one of those things that subsequent Ratchet games have continually cut back on, presumably because it's a lot of extra work that few players actively appreciate compared to the number of players that miss something and get confused or annoyed, or because the next game does this same thing but even worse and they...
Okay, so he's making it out to be a much larger problem than it actually is, right? Because whenever you get to the end of something, there is usually a portal that goes straight back to your ship. Whether or not you've actually completed the end goal, it doesn't really matter. And also on Battaglia, the grind rail section is right at the start. I mean, the pilot helmet is kind of a not story-heavy planet. Like, put the helmet on another planet, you lose almost nothing, because that planet is nothing, so it's kind of a side quest. Yeah, well, yeah, I guess. I really like that planet, though. So I'm hesitant in calling it superfluous. But I get what you mean.
After that, I do miss the multiple circular pathways that these first...
Yeah, story-wise, it's, yeah. But, like, I don't know. Where else could they have placed... Well, maybe they could have actually had the guy on Poketaru sell it to you. But, well, I'm just glad they added another planet, to be honest.
Couple Ratchet games brought to the table, but I'll also say that I'm glad the later titles didn't go this far with it, because about 8 games into the series, these immersive loading screens went the way of, well, the loading screen, now that we're in the solid-state era. No matter how many times I may have traveled back and forth between planets in these early games when I was younger, having load times masked by the ship flying through the depths of space kept my mind active, wondering what other planets might be in this awesome universe, what the next game might bring. At least that was the case until my first PS2's disc reader started crapping out, and then I had to deal with a few dozen cycles of this loading screen again and again and again and again and again instead of just one. Hooray! But even through all of this backtracking, even while Drek may be too busy adding more corporate titles...
Yeah, like the later games have less and less exciting planets, so I wouldn't want to lose it either. Yeah, like, I'm playing through 3 again right now. 2 has some pretty good ones, but like, Ratchet and Clank 3, or Up Your Arsenal for any Americans out there, it's like... There's like 5 normal levels, and then the rest is like battlegrounds or arena fights. Like most notably the obstacle courses in the arena, which is basically just like the same obstacle course over and over and over again with slight variations. So when they start to take it away, it really... You can really feel it. And that's coming from someone who actually likes Deadlocked too. So, I don't know, it feels like in that game they made a bit more out of it. But in 3, it's just really boring. Which is a shame, because the actual levels in 3 are really good.
Who was named during this portion of the game to make an appearance, each of these planets is atmospherically tied to Drek's deeds, even if the game doesn't show him directly again until near the end of Act 2. On Battaglia, his troops are the ones that are assaulting the defense base. The Blarg are stationed on Gaspar, and they're the ones dumping toxic waste on Poketaru, and the end result of that toxic dumping is that planet will inevitably look like Orxon. I would have loved to see him a little bit more directly during this section of the game, but it's just an odd example of the game being designed first and the story moving around to fill the pieces, which, to be fair, seems to be how Ratchet even works to this day. But as it...
Really? Because, like, there is a red thread that goes through the entire game. Like with Drek harvesting planets and polluting, right? Like, he's basically destroying planets so he can buy them for cheap. I would say Rack 1 is the game with the best planets in the series. I do love the other games and aspects of them, but a lot of Rack was best in Rack 1. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, Rack 1, and I will defend this to the end of time, but Rack 1 have the multiple paths. Like, almost every single planet has at least 2 paths you can take. And that's just, it just feels like you're on an adventure, like you're actually exploring. Because like in the later games, it's like you have a mission. 2 did have some alternate paths, but like in 3 especially, it's like you have a mission, go there and do that, and that's it. And it doesn't feel like Ratchet and Clank.
Is after a cutscene on the way to Battalia where he completely chews out Quark for failing to kill Ratchet and Clank, the Supreme Executive Chairman is more of an ominous presence during this act, the puppet master behind the strings in a way. It's after this series of detours that the duo really starts digging down to Drek's more sinister side. After the previous series of more straightforward levels that may have a teleporter or a taxi that takes you back to the start, Oryxon bears a closer resemblance to the first act's multiple circular paths. We already saw one of these as Clank that we can actually revisit as Ratchet later on, reminding us just how much faster Ratchet moves, and shortly after we jump down to the previously inaccessible part of Oryxon, we'll find 2 more paths. On the right is the progression path, putting you up against up to a dozen deadly mutated.
Why are you using the bomb glow again?
Combat's difficulty and really
I swear to God, sometimes it just doesn't seem like this guy knows how to play the game.
That next info bot. To the left is a challenging, mostly platforming-focused section where Ratchet jumps across.
And Rack 1 has more cool secret areas than most of the game. And it feels in Rack 1 that you are working with less of a set plan, while most of the other games it always feels like they know what to do next. Yeah, because it's like you have a mission, go do it. I really do like the progression in Ratchet and Clank 1, because it feels more organic. In the other games, you're just told what to do, but in the first one, you're on an adventure, right?
Across precarious platforms while dodging missiles from a large ship. At the end of the ladder path, he'll find a nanotech vending machine where for 4,000 bolts you can add a 5th hit point instead of your regular 4, and for 30,000 more bolts you can buy an even more caffeinated drink that maxes you out at 8 nanotech hit points. Unless you're an experienced player going for a challenge run, you will definitely want to save up for these health upgrades, even if that means you've got to go without buying a weapon or 2 for a little bit. This route opens up...
Wait, hang on. Usually you won't have enough money for the second nanotech, because 30,000 bolts is a lot during your first playthrough. So if you've been buying the weapons up until that point, chances are you probably won't have 30,000. And like, I don't know, I don't like going back to that spot and buying the nanotech until I've bought all the weapons except the Rhino. Because like, you have to remember that the Rhino in Ratchet and Clank 1 costs 100,000. So for 1/3, a little bit less than 1/3 of that, you get 3 extra hit points. It's really not that worth it.
Clank's original path in the level as well, so it's only a few steps away from the ship if you want to come back later for that second health bump, and you'll probably have to do that because 30,000 bolts is a lot to come by at this point in the game. And in all likelihood, at least if you're like most players, you're going to be buying up all the gadgets as you come because the game taught you to do exactly...
He's using the bomb... You're supposed to snipe those guys with the blaster so that you don't wake up the big guys, and you can just go through.
That. But depending on your playstyle, some of these new weapons are probably going to be more useful than others. I used to love using Poketaru's decoy glove, for example, because having an inflatable dummy that took some of the heat off of me from enemies was just enough to overcome most challenges. Nowadays, though, the main times that I would have used the decoy glove, like during the boat tour through the resort, I would rather just suck up the enemies boarding the hoverboat with the suck cannon.
Oh hey, look, the only time in the game the suck cannon is actually of any use.
That you can first buy on Planet Gaspar is a great secondary melee weapon, which, like the wrench, doesn't need any ammo. But outside of the little bomb robots on Planet Gaspar that the Wallopers made for, I usually find better results with the ranged guns. One of my old favorites, the Glove of Doom, which you can buy much earlier in the game, I've used less and less over time because these little robots tend to struggle with jumping and they get destroyed by many AoE attacks. And look, I'll be honest here, I have only ever used the Mine Glove when I'm out of ammo with almost all of my other guns, because it's just not that useful.
I get what you mean about his weapon usage, but like, let him use the weapons he wants, even if it's a bad... Well, yeah, I know. It's just me being a stickler for certain things. It's not meant in a bad way, right? But that's like the thing about the first Ratchet and Clank game especially. Weapons have a certain use to them. Like, using the Mine Glove on the boat ride is just like, yeah, not a good idea, obviously. And I think he knows that too, right? But like, what I like to do sometimes when I play through the game is just use weird weapons in weird places. So that might also be something that he's doing.
Useful as a trap weapon, in my opinion. That's because the enemy AI in Ratchet 1 is only set to either attack you when you're within a certain range, or go idle and forget that you ever existed if you step back beyond that invisible barrier. There's no in-between here, so it's not exactly easy to get most enemies to chase you unless you use the Mine Glove Taunter combo to set them off. But even then, that's two weapons that can do the job of one. If any of these weapons, or some of the earlier ones, don't sound like your style and you want to save money, it's okay to skip out on the ones that you don't know that you'll use a ton. But these next two I'm about to mention are two of your best options in the entire game, so if you're going to cut corners, don't cut them here. That would be the Devastator rocket launcher and Orxon's Visibomb gun. The Devastator is good enough to be the gun featured on the game's cover and most of its promotional art, so you know...
Weapons have a certain use until you get the Visibomb gun, and almost all enemies can be killed from the ship. Yeah. The Visibomb gun is kinda overpowered. But it's like relatively late in the game, right?
It packs a punch, but the Visibomb in particular has the potential to be the most broken weapon in the entire
Oh hey, yeah, he even
game,
acknowledged it.
firing off an insanely powerful remote-controlled missile that you can fly throughout just about any part of any level. So long as you position yourself behind cover where no enemies can get a pot shot in, and once you're used to the inverted
Also, if you don't know the level layout when using the Visibomb gun, it's kind of hard to control it where you want it because its turn radius is kind of large. But like, if you actually know the layouts and you know you've played through the game a couple of times, then yeah, the Visibomb gun is absolutely overpowered.
You can not only take out whole groups of enemies in just a couple shots from miles away, you can explore.
Yeah, you can use the map, but the map doesn't show you all the geometry, right? Like the caves and, you know, stuff that might be in the way.
About every inch of each planet's landscape as you wish. It's an incredible testament to this game's world design that you won't often find some unfinished corner of a level, and the Visibomb is the reason why. Ratchet and Clank's designers had to...
Yeah, and yet it kind of does disconnect if you go too far off.
To ensure that
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like you can't get you can also scout with it, right? Like he's doing right here.
In cities like Metropolis to Blackwater City to the distances here on Orxon and beyond, because any player, thanks to this gun, could find a spot where Insomniac cut corners. This made the Visibomb a nightmare to design for, apparently, but it also necessitated that this game's world had to feel so, well, complete, rather than just being paths to an objective. It's hard to say that any weapon has had the impact on the design of this entire franchise more than this gun here. Probably more importantly than that, like I said earlier, this thing shreds enemies. It's probably going to be your go-to if you're
well,
like me
it's basically
like
the Devastator,
don't like that Blarg ship on
but
your
guided,
left path?
right?
Blow them up. Don't like
or maybe
the
it's a bit more
mutated
powerful.
crabs ready
Ah,
to
yeah,
tear you
look,
apart,
there he
or
goes.
the little screamer
And
that'll wake up and alert
well,
them
actually, they are gonna wake up
Blow 'em
once you.
Don't like Quark? Blow 'em up. From this point on
Yeah, I
in the
don't like
game,
Quark. I
so
always
many
blow him up
close-range
the
enemies
first chance I
have
get.
faster reaction times, or are just more dangerous to take on, and the ranged enemies
And those
start
fucking
finding ways to
gunships
attack
suck.
you from further and further out of your early weapon's maximum range. So the Visibomb is one of your best ways to even the odds. Once Ratchet and Clank find the infobot, the gravity of Drek's plan finally starts to hit Ratchet and maybe shake him out of the hissy fit he's been having for the last third of the game. And by that, I mean his response to Drek preparing to blow up an entire planet. But
when I first 100% Rack 1, I felt so stupid for not knowing I could destroy the blimp. Yeah, but it's like, there's a reason it's a skill point, right? It's supposed to be kind of hidden. Like, I didn't know I could destroy the blimp for ages. I think I read about it on like a some cheat page on the internet.
And it just because its orbit would be perfect for the new Blarg home is...
That's just mean.
Yeah, he's right. That's mean. Killing somewhere around 1 trillion living beings. That gets some harsh words. But if you cut Ratchet off in traffic or beat him in a round of golf, he will personally hunt you down.
I swear to God, the problem he has with Ratchet's character in this game is so unnecessary. Like, he was never out to stop Drek or save the galaxy, right? He just wanted to adventure. He just wanted an adventure. And in exchange for that adventure, he promised to bring Clank to Quark. But then Quark literally drops him into a pit of lava and sends a huge monster at them to kill them. And he thinks it's weird that he throws a tiny little hissy fit. I don't know.
On the icy planet Hoven, the duo powers through a high-stakes war against Blarg troopers and stops the ship carrying this massive Planet Buster missile, which thankfully doesn't explode and destroy the planet they're currently on. That would probably be bad. But in case you want to dilly-dally around before that ship takes off, Hoven's also home to 2 optional paths, one where Clank can pay for his third and final upgrade, the Hydro Pack, and one where Ratchet fixes a miner's drill.
The Hydro Pack isn't optional, actually.
The rarest
you need it on Drak's flagship to get through the timed sections, I believe. Maybe you can just about manage it. I haven't checked.
Galaxy.
But I think you actually need it.
The Hydro Pack is great for speeding up any and all sections involving swimming, but is mostly used for revisiting previous planets and obtaining hidden gold bolts, like, say, in the...
One thing I can say I hate about Rack 1 is that the skill points, most of them are good, but way too many of them are just destroy ships flying around, but only on some planets. Yeah, there's a bunch of just destroy stuff. So... And they're like really weird to figure out too, because if you miss one thing, like just one thing, it won't unlock. But like the ones, like the sniping, I think it's called. Direct ship swimming area is not mandatory. Yeah, maybe you're right. I might have mixed. Yeah, okay, yeah. The swimming through the rings aren't mandatory because that unlocks the code bot, right? Yeah, okay, so I'm sorry about that. That was my mistake. Although it might as well have been obligatory because it makes the game so much more fun to play when underwater.
A secret cave on Novalis. That raritanium ore, meanwhile, can be traded to... Wait, hold on. This is the guy that made us pay for the grind boots. Man, screw this guy. He keeps trying to stiff us.
You will find raritanium for me.
No, I will not. Whatever. It's more than worth it to deal with this guy anyway, because if we give him that raritanium ore, we'll get the Persuader in return, a piece of equipment that enables Ratchet to convince the cocky Gadgetron vendor guy... thing to lower the price of every vendor weapon from 25 to 50% depending on the weapon. And by the end of the game, you'll start seeing things like...
Wait, hang on. Is he not going to mention that you get the Persuader? The Persuader? At like... what is it, like the third to last level or something? And basically the only thing you'll have left to buy is the Tesla Claw.
Persuader and all of Ratchet's new trinkets on his belt or on his weird suspender nipple guard things, helping remind you just how far you've come on.
Like, unless you have been skipping every single box, you're not gonna get a lot out of the Persuader.
This journey, which is another one of those classic adventure games / Metroid flourishes.
Well, shoot my dog and call me Sally. Thanks, partner.
Also, fun fact, the drill that the miner was holding was originally designed to be a melee weapon called the Revolverator that would impale enemies and spin them around on the drill. Apparently, the gimmick didn't work all that well, leading to this being one of the only things that actually got cut from this game. Yet another gauntlet awaits after this at another one of Drek's orbital bases, as Ratchet and Clank try once again to catch up to his rapidly evolving plans. With the Planet Buster out of commission, the Blarg begin an all-out assault to try and destroy the planet in the way of their new home, and Ratchet and Clank rush through this base to thin out the troops and try to stop the siege. Not only is this level one of the most thrilling in the entire game, flawlessly combining high-octane fights with trespasser puzzles and barrier-generating towers that you've got to destroy to open the path forward, it ends with an awesome battle through space against Captain Quark, with the entire level in the backdrop to hype up this fight's scale. After several hours of talking about Quark, Ratchet can finally put his missiles where his mouth is and act on that rage. Also, Quark can breathe in space? That's believe it or not,
I have played Rack 1 so many times, I only get 3 weapons before the Persuader, and then buy the rest so I can buy everything but the Rhino and gold weapons. Yeah, that's a good tactic, I guess, because it saves you a lot of bolts. But like, really, what else do you need than the Bomb Glove? I mean, it is, after all, objectively the best weapon in the game.
Defining character trait for him going forward, so it's actually worth mentioning. Once Quark is defeated and Ratchet's had a moment or two to gloat, he and Clank find their third and final spaceship for this game, and also an infobot showing the ravaged planet below, because try as hard as they could, the two of them alone couldn't prevent the assault outright. Now that Ratchet's revenge blinders have finally come off, he sees that Clank has been right all along, and credit to him, he apologizes. Even as we've seen through Ratchet and Clank's own eyes, the horrifying progression of Drek's damage, from a planet in the beginning stages of a siege, to a planet being completely stripped of its resources, to the polluting and deadlier, more prolonged attacks, it's here, after seeing the end result, after seeing a completely decimated planet, that Ratchet comes to his senses. I think the most interesting thing I realized during my 3 consecutive playthroughs of this game to prepare for this video, you're damn right it's the ultimate retrospective, is why I never cared for this second act. I distinctly remember as a kid always feeling bummed out when
I get the Blaster, the Devastator, and Pyrocider, because they are my pre-Tesla Claw and Rhino mains. Actually, yeah, those are pretty good. It's a pretty good combo, although I don't know, I wouldn't change the Tesla Claw, or change the Pyrocider for the Tesla Claw. I don't remember if this was the case in the PlayStation 2 version, but I think it was. But the Tesla Claw kind of sucks in a way, where it'll damage the enemy, and then it'll take a while before the lightning bolt moves on to the next one. So it's not as effective against the critter type enemies.
And I got past Blackwater City, because the game just soured for me there. But until now, I always chalked that up to me not liking many of these levels themselves as much as the early game back then. Or maybe because when my age could be counted on just 2 hands, I struggled with some of the levels, which at points I definitely did. Later, I also attributed it to the darker atmosphere, sort of sapping some of that vibrant energy from the earlier game to that younger me. But these last 3 times through, I had a blast playing each of these 6 worlds, minus maybe the slow Clank section, but that's kind of a gimme. I loved the atmosphere the whole way through, and that drip-feed background storytelling of Drek's descent into pure evil, or more accurately, our slow realization of how far he'll go as we see him push the boundaries with every next planet.
Faster way to get the Tesla Claw to kill is to shit. What? Then when it damages, let it go and shit again, and it hurts enemies faster. Yeah, but it's like, there's something about not letting go of the button and just spinning in a circle, which you can't do with the Tesla Cloud. That feels so good. Yeah, shot. Yeah, it had to be something like that, like, right? But yeah, it's still something about the Pyrocider. It's probably my second favorite weapon after the Bomb Glove.
Every next plan, every next assault is just masterful, and even after dozens of playthroughs, I'm noticing new facets of this implicit storytelling with each new save file I create. Now, it's clear to me that the reason that I don't care for Act 2 is exclusively because Ratchet's attitude brings it all down.
Oh, come on, dude. It's not that bad.
He's a dick. That's it. That's the whole thing. I just roll my eyes every time he opens his stupid mouth, from the moment he turns on Clank to the moment he rolls back around to semi-sincerity. For almost 20 years now, I thought there had to be an additional reason that one character couldn't possibly sour the whole thing. And while there are many players that were just fine with Ratchet's character, either because it fit the era, or for players a bit older than 7, perhaps it fit their age and the relative attitudes and demeanor of adolescents matching Ratchet's me mentality, the more that I grow as an adult and as a human, the more I agree with the takeaway that the uncorrupted 7-year-old version of me had way back when. And at the end of the day, the general audience agreed. Insomniac realized that they needed the audience to invest themselves in more likable characters if the audience was going to care about those characters' journey, and Ratchet changed going forward. Now,
honestly, they're probably right. But Insomniac did not fix Ratchet in the preceding games. They made him shallow. Like, it's so weird to me how people can say that the mid part of the game is bad because of Ratchet's attitude when it makes so much sense. It's a really weird criticism to have.
Now that doesn't mean that if you still like this Ratchet, you're some sort of emotionally stunted egocentrist, of course. Wait, does it?
Oh my god, that's the 4th cut to credits.
Is Ratchet's single apology enough to overcome all of this? And can I forgive the fact that it took so long, or that he was so mean during his hot-headed run? No, but it's a start at least, and we've got...
The problem is that most of the criticism just boils down to don't be mean to Clank. Because reasons.
More pressing matters anyway, so I think it's something we can at least look past as we venture into the game's final act. On the war-torn planet below, we get a nice inversion of the slow Clank-only levels, because this is the game's only Ratchet-only excursion, depending on how you count the planets before you get the hover pack, where Clank's just kind of a backpack. Those are pretty much Ratchet-only levels too, but we're not going to count them here. Because Drek's troopers destroyed the city's lightning rods, Clank's shiny metal ass is a perfect conductor for the lightning, so the Lombax has to go solo. I think this sort of stripped-back, Ratchet-only deal would have actually been better during the previous Whiny Act.
Actually, you know what would be a good cut to credits? The second the lightning hits Clank. Because at that point, Ratchet is, like, toast. Literally burnt toast.
I will say, because it could have functioned as a realization for Ratchet that he actually does rely on Clank and enjoy his companionship. We're several games too early for mid-gameplay dialogue to start making its way into the series, but even a quick in-engine cutscene here could have acted as a good character moment. As it is though, this mission comes at a fine enough time. I just think that it could have been a little bit better than Ratchet's sudden, jarring jump back to liking Clank and being a lovable goofball. The level of Gorda City itself holds the most...
But yeah, he is right though, it's a bit jarring. I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but my second favorite Ratchet is... Acid, because he actually feels like a person, because he is varied in what he wants and feels and such. I don't know if I explained it well, but yeah. I'm not quite picking up what you're putting down. Can you try to rephrase it, maybe? Meanwhile, I'll go get some more water.
Pathways of any in the entire game, with all but one being optional to be fair. These are all perfectly designed to induce anxiety too, with narrow pathways, even narrower Magnaboot pathways, a sort of stealth section, ice physics, wind on top of ice physics. It's mechanically a great stakes raiser amplified by the bleak atmosphere, hundreds of destroyed skyscrapers around you, and again the removed safety net with Clank no longer on your
just
back.
Bad? Like, I feel as in most of the games, he's like, yeah, good guy doing good. Never seeming to focus on the wrong thing, like in Rack 1. Well, in Acid, he's split between doing the right thing and doing what he wants. Yeah. I don't think it's not done perfectly, but it's better than most of the games, in my opinion. Oh yeah, Crack in Time. I had some trouble with with the shortening there. Yeah, Crack in Time. Yeah. Yeah, that's like a very character game for Ratchet, right? But he's not like focused on doing the wrong thing necessarily in Ratchet and Clank 1. It's just that he's doing what he wants to do, right? He's selfish, and that's fine. That can be part of a character, right? So, like, getting mad when a selfish character is, like, an established selfish character is doing something selfish doesn't quite makes sense. But like you're saying, Kev, he is good guy doing good in most of the games. And like it doesn't line up with either Crack in Time or the first game, and somewhat not the second, but it's like he's the hero in most of them, and that's what he's doing, is just saving the galaxy without any sort of depth to him.
Today, I still kind of loathe playing this level, but now I realize that's more a sign of a job well done than anything else.
What? Really? I think it's a sign of a poorly done job. Like, the ice physics sucks.
If we brave the icy, windy path on the left of the central hub, we'll run into Captain Quark again, or rather, Steve Mc...
Yeah, he does seem very one-note. It's like, when you go from 1 and directly to 2, it's like, where's the... He's not even mad. Like, he's not even that mad at Quark in the second game, and not even in the third game. He's like, he just beats Quark and is like, oh, it's that guy. It's very one-note. It's very shallow. It's just... He's just not a good character in most of the games, which is a shame because he is a really good character in 1. And I wish more people would see that.
Quark, who Ratchet's just kind of okay with...
Although, of course, he's not really reacting that well to Quark here either. So, I guess... Maybe they decided to tone it back a bit after the whole angry stage.
Seeing now? I guess he really did just get it all out of his system, because not only does Ratchet not immediately blast Quark, he's happy to go along with Quark's new gig as a Gadgetron salesman.
Yeah, it actually brings it up
bolts,
too.
You can buy a Gadgetron PDA.
Public display of affection?
No, personal delivery assistant.
Allowing you to buy ammo even when you're not near a Gadgetron vendor, albeit at an incredibly marked up price. It's not really worth it to use this all that often, but if you're in a pinch, it can be a lifesaver. This path also...
Honestly, I kind of wish they'd just drop Quark. He's a funny enough character, but he takes too much of the spotlight in later games.
Gives you a little peek at what looks to be a new weapon off in the distance, and this is the Morpho Ray that you'll obtain when you reach the end of the stealth section guarded by security drones. This avian armament arose the amazing trend of animal-altering apparatuses in the Ratchet series. That was one take. I did that on the first take. It's a bird gun. It turns things into birds. The series really likes weapons that transform enemies into different animals, and it's all thanks to the chicken gun here. Alright, let's get back on track here. After a gauntlet down the main path, including a short but thrilling grind rail section where Ratchet's forced to flee from and dodge attacks from some guard bots, he buys an infobot with the coordinates to the Blarg's robot manufacturing base on planet Quartu, which is also where Clank was born. If you complete all 3 of these paths, a secret 4th route will open up with a pretty sick swing shot path, where you're more or less swinging through the entire city with no safety net whatsoever, just a bottomless pit and the sometimes janky swing shot range, hopefully keeping you stable as you hook again and again onto the same moving targets, and all just for a gold bolt and some thrills.
Dumb part of the game, games being less platform focused, you don't have stuff like that anymore.
Get the O2 mask, but mercifully this is only a one-way ticket this time. We can't access the main path just yet, as we don't have the gadget to get us past the warbots and they'll just attack us on sight. But we can take a stroll over to the left, meet another scientist, turn Clank into a giant robot, which is pretty cool.
In Gladiator, he kind of has a moment or two where he is like, yeah, getting the money, the fame, the babes, and is like, this is wrong, but he kind of can see the benefits for him, but Clank says one thing, and then he turns more into the Ratchet from most of the series. Yeah, Gladiator. Yeah, there was something like that in there, wasn't there? Gladiator is probably the game I've played the least of in the PlayStation 2 era. But, like, it's probably my second favorite.
And obtain the coordinates to Gadgetron's base of operations on another planet so that we can get their new Hollow Guys gadget and come back. As cool as the idea of Giant Clank is, it can kind of be thrown together with the Hydro Displacer as one of those barely used gimmicks that was sort of just thrown in for variety's sake. It pretty much only gets used twice per game during the entire PS2 saga, and since then it's never...
Wait, huh?
Giant Clank is, it can kind of be thrown together with the Hydro Displacer as one of those barely used gimmicks that was sort of just thrown in for variety's sake. It pretty much only gets used twice per game during the entire PS2 saga, and since then...
Twice. Was it 2 times or was it 3 times in 2? Whatever. It's like... It's a dumb gimmick. It's not very fun, but it's like it does get its use. I don't think you should use it more.
It may as well be a collective fever dream we all had. Not that I'm really complaining, keep in mind. There's only so much super fighting robot action that you can deal with, especially when the game can barely handle it itself. Both Giant Clank sections in this game slow the game down to a crawl, especially in the HD collection version of Ratchet 1, but I ran into it pretty equally on the PS2 version just about every time I got to this point. I suppose I should address the Giant Clank in the room now that I've finally mentioned it, the HD collection. Some fans...
Rack 2 is the game from the PS2 era I played the least. I like it, but when I was a kid I only had Rack 3 and Gladiator, and then I got Rack 1 and 2 later. And for some reason, most of the time play Rack 1 more than Rack 2. Yeah, definitely. Same here. I also play the first one way more than basically any other. I don't know, it's kinder to... It feels kinder to start it from the beginning than the others.
Fans are of the opinion that the HD collection for the original Ratchet and Clank trilogy is inferior to the PS2 versions due to a myriad of small and Sometimes admittedly less small glitches and issues that tend to affect the second and third game in particular. I'll save all of that stuff for when I get to those games, but Ratchet 1 was fortunate enough to come out on the other side of the porting process mostly unscathed. The only things you're likely to run into are some extra slowdown here and there, and the oxygen meter that you've probably noticed hiding halfway off screen at points throughout the video. This is actually how that same meter was stored when not in use in the original version of the game as well, but since the game was originally in 4.3, you never saw that far off screen to even see it. Here the game is rendered in 16:9, so this will pop up and hang out for a little bit after you go for a swim, and I'm usually very lonely, so I enjoy the company. You do have to choose carefully where and how to play Ratchet 1 though, because you can get wildly different results from platform to platform. The game runs like hot garbage, for example, if you play the PS2 disc on a backwards compatible PS3, because Insomniac developers really loved...
Yeah, I am iffy on the gameplay of Rack 1, but it's the game I always just put on playthrough, then move on, so much easier than the rest of the games, and I played Rack 1 for the first time on the PS3. Yeah, it's not bad on the PlayStation 3 unless you're using the backwards compatibility.
Their tiny tricks and optimizations, including storing data on the innermost part of the discs to load and stream assets fast enough so the game wouldn't crash. I do really like the gameplay of 1 though. In some cases, I actually prefer it to 2 and 3, but like 2 and 3 have the strafe, and that's really hard to let go of. To even a marginally different platform or another disc type, like say going from 3 DVDs, each with their own crucial data allocation, and smushing all of that onto a single Blu-ray, or throwing all of that in a digital medium, you're in for trouble. There are issues on the PlayStation 3 HD collection exclusive to either the digital or physical version of that game. The Vita version is admirable, but has even more issues. Even on a high-end PC, the Ratchet games were, until relatively recently, known to cause tons of problems with PS2 emulators, many of which were exclusive to this franchise. So no matter where you go, it can be kind of a mess, but I've never had more than a few audio-visual issues here and there with the physical PS3 version, so I tend to default there because I like me some crisp 1080p footage. That said though, for the sake of the retrospective, I did finally unseal my Vita copy of the trilogy, which only got a physical release in Europe, and I put 2 full playthroughs there to get the Platinum Trophy and say that I've 100% completed every version of this game before making this video. Call me Henry David, I like to be thorough. This is all a lot of words to say that some fans prefer the purest PS2 route, and I totally understand that. Others will trade complete stability for widescreen support and ease of access, and I'm in that latter category because, speaking from experience, recording PS2 games natively can be an absolute nightmare if you want things to look decent, so I avoid that whenever I possibly can. Speaking of things I avoid, the next planet, which is home to another one of those dumb speedrun strategies that I found on, like, my 47th playthrough.
How can you not like Kalibo 3?
This is probably pound for pound the most challenging area in the entire game up until the final level. It's a really funny contrast with this planet's super bright atmosphere, actually. The first time in a while that we had a
you
nice
can't call
level,
it,
and they just throw us into a damn gauntlet. The main reason for the spike in
you
challenge
can't call it
is
challenging and then show footage of
Commandos.
you just
I don't,
not playing
these guys
the game
make me
well.
uncomfortable. In part because they actually have a straight-up broken attack range. Even if you utilize the trusty Visibomb, these troopers, when alerted, will fire pinpoint shots from further away than the game's enemy draw distance. I repeat, this enemy can snipe Ratchet with a pistol from further away than you can see. Throw in some gauntlets in the form of Gadgetron test rooms for many of the very same weapons you've been using all game, and damage.
And like, yeah, that is kind of BS, but I don't think he attacks you unprovoked. I don't think they actually attack you unprovoked. Like, they're not going to see you from 2 miles away and start shooting. You have to actually attack them first.
Missile firing dropships for good measure, and you've got a hectic planet that'll really test your mettle. That is, unless you jump on these crates and aim a Visibomb just right to trigger the switch on the other side of this laser fence, which you would usually open after finishing the level.
I like the Golden Bolt, but I would say based on his series, he's not generally the best player when it comes to the Rack series. Yeah, I don't know, maybe not. But like, it's fine, right? It's just me nitpicking, really. But like, generally, it's just me nitpicking, but when you state that something is hard, and then you show a clip of you just completely butchering the use of the Devastator, like he's literally in close combat with the Devastator, which is meant to be shot from afar. It's like, it kind of irks me. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't watched that many of his Ratchet and Clank videos. Maybe he's just hamming it up for the comments. I don't know. Some people actually do that. They show bad gameplay just so people will comment, wow, you suck at this game, don't you?
I was so excited when I first discovered this trick, because when I checked in with the Ratchet and Clank community, nobody seemed familiar with it, and breaking what I thought was new ground 15 years after the game's release is just neat. Of course, then I found out that actual speedrunners don't even come to this planet thanks to wall clipping, and I've since found out that a few other players did independently come to similar strategies over the years, but never brought it up on the internet. But hey, I'll take what I can get here. Either way, I still do usually play the level most of the time just for the challenge, but it's a fun little skip if you don't ever feel like it, and I just kind of wanted to show it off. Down this hallway is the office of Gadgetron's CEO, who offers Ratchet the Hologuise prize only after he wins another hoverboard race and then records a Gadgetron commercial on the spot afterwards.
Hi. This is Ratchet for, Gadgetron hoverboards.
I love this small, audio cues when he moves his hands.
Boards in the galaxy. Check out the new XZ88 from Gadgetron. It's so hot, it's cool.
I think I got the wrong guy.
Yeah, Captain Quark is really sold out.
Turns out Captain Charisma here only has wit when he's not on camera, but Ratchet's officially a Gadgetron employee now, so maybe we'll see a discount one day. Now that we've got the Hologuise, we could go right back to Planet Quartu and continue the main story, but there's still a really fun grind rail challenge off to the left of the building's main plaza. After a lengthy and dangerous ride dodging oncoming train cars and robots that are also leaving bombs on the tracks for those same...
We all know the fact that Q-Force and All for One are the best rat games, am I right? Or am I high? Wait. They can't both be the best, so I think we're gonna have a gladiatorial duel between them and then decide. But I'm putting my money on Q-Force, to be honest.
Train cars? That's a little suspicious. Ratchet and Clank meet the actual robot that voices the Gadgetron help desk. Oh my god, the robotic AI tutorial...
Dude! He actually has... Dude, I need that t-shirt. I desperately need that t-shirt.
Helper companion thing. It's been a real person the whole time? Alexa, what have you not been telling me?
Hey, nerd!
Alexa?
Isn't it supposed to be Rogaine?
Fuck are you?
Oh, do better.
I told you never to contact me again. Bezos.
That's a really good bit.
Lady gives the duo a
I like that one.
In exchange for their silence.
Oh wait, Q-Force was the more normal one? Oh, then never mind then. All for One is the best one. No doubt.
This gadget allows you to see all of the secret areas on any planet's map screen, which will now be highlighted in green until they're explored. This will make gold bolt hunting that much easier for players that want to go for full completion, and now we can go back to Quartu. There's still one optional route right by the ship, a timed underwater section through an electrified coolant pool, a great use for Clank's hydro pack. Also, why is it electrified? At the end of this path is one of the most useful optional items in the entire game, the Bolt Grabber, which increases Ratchet's pickup range for bolts.
Oh yeah, the Bolt Grabber too.
The bolts had a range somewhat similar to Spyro's gem pickup range, which is to say,
it's also the underwater
far.
thing.
Until you have the
yeah,
Bolt
I totally
Grabber,
forgot about that. But
like
the Bolt Grabber is one of the best power-ups in the entire game.
Encounter to pick up every last bolt that was dropped. The Bolt Grabber makes cleaning up infinitely easier, and we're gonna need it if we want to grab those last few weapons. Back down the main path, we get to use our new fancy Hologuise, and for once, Ratchet's the one who got us a pace-breaking gadget, not Clank. When equipped,
the first time I played Rack 1, I did not get the Bolt Grabber, and you probably hated your life when you actually found out that it was a thing later, right? Because Jesus Christ, I think the pickup radius for bolts is super short. in the first game. I did hate that so much, yes. Yeah, because I don't think I found it in my first playthrough either.
Hollow Guys disguises Ratchet as a smaller version of the Warbots. You'll move slower than Clank somehow. I don't even know how that's possible. You can't attack when it's active, and you can't even jump. But what you can do...
It's like, it's the bolt grabber in Rack 1, and then it's the... what you get for trading the Quark statue with that nerd on the Megacorp planet. I don't remember. It's not the box breaker because you get that from the giant amoeboid thing on Orkson. It's like 2 Ratchet lengths before the bolt grabber. Yeah, it's insane how short it is before you get the grabber.
Is wave. You can wave at the guards so that they lower their guard. Without it, they'll leave the force fields in place so that you can't pass, and they'll activate some deadly security lasers if they realize that you're not actually a robot. With it, they wave back, not even thinking twice about why you're several feet shorter than you should be. But when Clank's short,
what happened after you used the Glow of Doom there, because I'm pretty sure they just
breaking, entering, and killing a few dozen robots before they can set off alarms, Clank shares a sweet moment with the computer that built him, which means that he actually wasn't defective, but specifically designed by a rogue AI. That's very concerning past the surface level, but I guess robots do know how to love. There's not much time for a family picnic, though, because Mama spits out another kid, an infobot that reveals Drek's newest plan. For all of their trouble interfering with the ultimate Supreme Executive Chairman up until this point, Ratchet and Clank are rewarded with Ratchet's homeworld Veldin being Drek's new target. No good deed goes unpunished. Out of what could only be described as pure spite, Drek decides that this desert planet has the perfect orbit in the entire galaxy, and he's already moved his entire fleet of ships into Veldin's orbit, along with his second planet-destroying superweapon of the game,
so in character for Drek.
Knowing what we've learned about Ratchet, it's safe to say he takes this pretty well. The fleet as a level is mostly a linear affair, but in case Ratchet's not in a rush to save his home, there's another timed swimming section here too. Finishing this one awards you with a code bot, a little robot whose express purpose is to be a key, because, say it with me, we didn't have enough ways to open doors yet. Why didn't you say it with me? The CodeBot is one of the few casualties of the game's fast development, an item that was intended to have a much larger purpose that only ends up being used a single time thanks to being added so
animate the arms going to the side when you insert it.
Open the big mysterious door tucked off to the side on Planet 4 to give you 1 gold bolt and thousands of regular bolts. At the very least, this should hopefully give you enough money to either buy that second health upgrade or, with the help of the Persuader, the final 2 vendor weapons. Incidentally, these two both have little quirks that have always kind of bugged me. We have the drone device, a weapon that spawns 6 little drones that'll orbit Ratchet and take hits for him, or far more likely, fly into enemies that get too close and explode. It's not all that powerful, however, and the drones don't tend to defend against some enemy bullets, so it's another one of those weapons that many players tend to look past for better ones, myself included.
I like the Clank meets his mom moment, but it feels a bit too fast, if you get me. She's like, "Hi, son. Has a birth now, leave." She is like, "Hi, son. Has a birth now, leave." You feel they could have had her talk with Clank for like 10 more seconds, it feels. A bit rushed, pre-infobot. I guess, but it's more like a small side thing. Just to acknowledge it.
The other weapon, the Tesla Claw, is thankfully much better.
The Tesla Claw is really good for enemies that just explode, but really bad for enemies that actually stay for a second before they disappear.
But it's a whopping 40,000 bolts without the Persuader and 30,000 with it, so I don't usually end up buying it until I clear the CodeBot room. The tiny, and I mean minuscule, thing that has always bugged me about both of these weapons is that as the final 2 weapons introduced in the game, they have ammo-related oversights. When you pick up ammo for every other weapon in the game, the weapon name is highlighted in orange text, but these 2 don't have that highlight. They're just plain white like regular text would be. The word claw isn't capitalized on the Tesla Claw when you grab ammo, and the drone device is actually called the drone glove in both its ammo and the vendor description because it was yet another weapon that was going to be a thrown weapon until very late in development. I can't stress enough that neither of these issues matter whatsoever, of course, especially compared to the drones being far less effective than they could be in combat, you know, the thing the game's based around. It's just something that kind of bothered me when I was younger that I still notice to this day, a rare example of Insomniac missing a spot when polishing this game as much as they did. There's a really strong chance the game would have run
this
into
game,
far
yeah,
more
but like the
issues
other
than
games
just
are
these two tiny ones had it not gone through 4 full rounds of focus testing, 1 for each quarter of the game. And don't just take it from me, Ted Price said exactly this himself when writing up a post-mortem article about this game's development, that if they hadn't had to constantly push themselves, and yes, crunch, for practically all of Ratchet 1's development, there would have been so many bugs to whittle down at the very end of production that they would have had to delay the game into 2003. That 2 of the most noteworthy oversights are completely irrelevant is a testament to the game's incredible quality standards. It's just kind of a shame that those 2 were things that a 7-year-old caught immediately.
I don't know if those are the only 2 noteworthy parts about the game being rushed. I mean, some of the cutscenes feels out of place. I mean, they're all probably the because of the short time they had to actually work on the game. So it's like,
The rest of this level is a lengthy holodeck section as Ratchet and Clank power and sneak through the different ships before they steal a fighter jet and destroy the fleet's defensive turrets. But, like always, Drek is just one single step ahead of them. When they finally reach the bridge of the command ship, they find...
As someone who has seen all of the Golden Bolts rack vids, is all of the games are crunched. Rack 1 probably the least. Yeah, definitely. Ratchet and Clank 2 has horrible weapon, like just horrible weapons, basically. Or like, balancing, horrible weapon balancing. The third one has weird stuff with it. Yeah, I think Rack 1 is probably the game that suffered the least from the crunch.
Find the last infobot of the game, showing Drek standing on the deplanetizer on Veldin, ready to blow the planet into pieces. It's all come down to the same place where this adventure began, as
Rack 2 story feels unfinished in a way, like things happen, but why, I don't know, next planet. Yeah, and like the ending, you defeat the protopat and then just sharp cut to credits. Or, well, that's how it feels. Like, why was Angela not just killed in Rack 2? What did she even do? She tried to kill Ratchet. Tried and failed. Then she got captured. And then she said a funny swear that got bleeped out. And that's pretty much it. And then she disappeared from the series entirely. She might as well have just been killed.
Touches down his 4th ship right on the same makeshift landing pad where the dinky first one had been sitting not all that long prior. If the Gadgetron...
Oh, by the way, yeah, the capture, how she got captured actually led to the worst boss battle in the entire series, I think. So, yeah, that doesn't do her any good either.
Homeworld wasn't the toughest battle in the game. Veldin certainly is. A gauntlet...
But you can't call it tough and then try to kill the commando with a wrench.
Full of GIMP commandos, tanks, dropships, swing shots, grind rails, you name it, this level's got it. That even includes a trespasser door, the thruster pack's butt slam door, and the hydro displacer's less than
She didn't even fix the protopat device herself. Clank just said the batteries are in the wrong way. Yeah, so she's like pretty much useless. She had a key card that allowed them to access the facility, but like that's pretty much it.
Triumphant return.
And like she had the protopat at one point, and instead of, you know, outright killing it, she had to loosely tie it to a rocket and send it into space. What? All right, there is yeah, but like it's not that he's trying to kill the commando with a wrench, it's that he's simultaneously saying that it's a tough level.
First path at the very end of the game, being able to see what was just beyond the crash site where the journey began. It's basic game progression, showing how far the player has come, but simple works beautifully here. Also, Ratchet's quirk poster is gone, so somebody had to have taken that down while he was away. Huh. Unless you're some kind of sadist, this is most likely going to be a Visibomb-heavy level for you, where you hide behind cover to avoid the Gimp Commandos' laser-precise shots, chip at their numbers with the Visibomb, move forward once the coast is clear, and repeat the whole way through because there are a lot of them to chew through. This is really the only level where I end up using the PDA, because I'll happily eat the shipping costs for ammo if it means I don't have to deal with these guys directly. Eventually, we'll hit a wall, though. A wall in the
But it's not, like, the Commandos aren't that bad, because they won't spot you unless you aggro them, or like you fire at them from that distance.
Of a Dynasty Warriors level army that's standing between them and the Deplanetizer, with hundreds, and I mean hundreds of Gimps on screen at once.
No.
It's really weird. Why are they
are
wearing
not
that?
hundreds
But as my
of
dad
them
once told
on
me,
screen
the only way
once.
to deal with this many Gimps is to lean into it. So
There's
thanks
like
to a
20,
conveniently placed
maybe.
giant clank pad, we're turning this into a Dynasty Warriors game, horrible frame rate and all. We even get a giant robot fighting.
And then when Ratchet finds out who she is, she sends Ratchet to a planet where she sends him to another planet. Yeah, they probably just needed an excuse to send the player away. And it's really weird, honestly.
Against Drek's mech before Drek pretty much immediately decides, nah, fuck this, and turns Giant Clank back into regular Clank. And really, I wouldn't have it any other way besides all of the Gimps, of course. Taking Drek down with Giant Clank would have been a cop-out after the journey so far. The only way this journey should have ended is exactly how it does, with a massive one-on-one fight where Drek throws everything he has at you, and where you'll throw just about all of your ammo at him in return. Even to this day, this is one of the best finales in the entire franchise, where the payoff is just as challenging and invigorating.
Well, it's a good finale. The fight is kind of bugged in places, and it's really annoying to die because you start all over again. But it doesn't exactly have strong competition. So saying it's one of the best final fights in the series isn't actually saying much. And also, Ratchet is so dense in Rack 2, he seems to never realize what's happening. He's just like, yeah, next thing throughout the game. Yeah, it's like, it feels like they overshot, they majorly overshot the change to his character because of the feedback they got from him being a little bit angry in the first game. And then they just went and mellowed him out all the way, and he's just like almost surfer dude, just going with the flow and like, yeah, whatever.
As the stakes leading up to
he does have some
once
fun
you beat the
lines,
first couple
but
phases
it's
and chase Drek across the destroyed plateaus, the fight will conclude on the Deplanetizer itself, where Drek reveals his true plan in traditional supervillain fashion. The reason the Blarg needed to flee Orxon was because Drek had overpolluted the planet himself in order to sell the real estate on the hybrid planet at a marked up price. And once everybody moved onto New Orxon, Drek would pollute this planet too and repeat the cycle to make trillions of bolts. It's the perfect motive for such a ridiculous wall of text monologue, the perfect impetus for players to want to blow Drek's stupid ponytail off of his stupid face, and the perfect setup for a fight that's not even halfway over yet. As much as I've jokingly ragged on the thruster pack slam buttons up until
like, he saves Angela after the worst rack boss ever, then he forgets why he even did what he did. Yeah. Yeah, you just gotta save the girl, right? I mean, she's captured. Never mind that she tried killing you or something.
At this point, they earned...
Like, seriously, if it was Rack 1, he would probably have somewhat of the same grudge towards her as he did Quark. Maybe a bit, not as, you know, as hard of an anger towards her, but like, had Angela been knocked out by the end of the boss, he would have left Angela. Yeah, Totally. Or well, he should have almost. You're just taking the key card and gone.
Alone as Drek continues to press the countdown switches and as players have to rush to the buttons to stop the timer, all while dodging his AoE attacks, his giant Glove of Doom robots, the missiles and needle missiles, and whatever else he may try to hit you with. For first-time players, this fight is going to be absolutely brutal to get through, but an experienced player like
the
me
only reason he was
knows
there
all
was to
the
save the
tricks.
woman.
First, you want to try to turn him into a chicken. When that doesn't work, you'll ride the grind rails for a bit in fear, and then, when you're on your final bit of health, equip the hollow guys, because Drek will think you're one of his guards, and immediately, definitely will stop attacking you. He won't come after you at all, I promise. And then, the kicker, this is the important part, run right into his attacks to throw him off. Or, you could do it the more fun way.
Yeah, there it is.
See, early in the game, when you're venturing through Blackwater City,
I'm
Ratchet and
amazed
Clank
he
dangles
hasn't
the
mentioned the
mother
Rhino
of all
until this
carrots
point,
in front of you.
honestly.
The Rhino super weapon, an illegally obtained black market rocket launcher that this shady guy is selling for an insane 150,000 bolts.
Oh,
a
yes,
weapon that you
150,000.
almost definitely won't be able to afford.
Why
on
did I
your
think it was
first
100?
Or even second playthrough. However, with
I remember some fans were like, they should bring Angela back. She was so amazing, and I'm here like, how so? Yeah, Angela is barely a blip on the radar as far as the Ratchet and Clank franchise goes. She was kind of meant to be a love interest, right? But like, the only part that's actually realized about that in the game is like Ratchet kind of stuttering something to her, and then the game ends.
some incredibly precise decoy glove wall clipping, or on the PS2 version by just talking to the hoverboard race girl while wearing the hollow guys, you can glitch onto the hoverboard track on foot. If you stand just below the biggest jump and use the taunter, the crates above you will explode and release their bolts all over your face. But crucially, these crates are designed to respawn when they're not visible, so that every lap you can fly right through them and feel awesome. So if you don't look up and you tape down your circle button, in just a few hours you can afford the Rhino without having to play the game 3 consecutive times. And the Rhino lives up to its super weapon status, a weapon that just indiscriminately shreds everything in sight. Each one of its...
Like, I don't get the reason for a Ratchet love interest, is at least while not done well. The other two are characters. Angela is such a non-entity. Yeah, I mean, it's probably just so he can be somewhat relatable. Like, that's the best guess I have. It didn't have anything in Rack 1, right? But it's like, as they moved on, they were like, how do we make this character more relatable? I get it, he can be in love. And then he's not really in love at all. He's just like there, reacting. He's a reactionary character in most cases.
50 shots fires a barrage of individual homing missiles that instantly kill just about every enemy in the game. Even Drek, a gauntlet of a fight without the Rhino, is just a trivial
when it was only on every other woman but never went anywhere.
Not nearly as fun, no, but definitely still as satisfying.
Was he though?
Let's wrap this up now.
I don't
After
remember.
You land that final shot on Drek,
like, I can't picture anything in my head.
he's launched onto his hybrid planet, and the deplanetizer flips its direction, pointing right at that planet. You know what you've got to do. With one final, oh so satisfying butt slam, the super laser blows Drek, his plan, and his planet into tiny subatomic pieces. Well, actually, it turns out this wasn't as effective as the Planet Buster missile, because the pieces of New Workson are not...
Hey, Salty, what's up? Oh, well, you asked me first. I know what... You know what's up, I'm watching a video.
Actually subatomic. They rain down onto the planet Veldin, knocking Ratchet and Clank off of the platform, and probably killing any dinosaurs that may be on the planet. Clank is able to grab onto the ledge, but...
What do you mean dinosaurs?
The servos in his arm...
Oh, because it's raining comets.
Fall, and the weight of Ratchet hanging on for dear life.
The mechanic woman he seemed to try to be like, yeah, look how hot I am, kinda, but she is so interested in Clank, so Ratchet gets jealous. Oh, yeah. Right. I think that's just kind of playing on how they're not very good friends at that point. But maybe you're right. Any top tier cringe yet? Well, not top tier, no, not at all. The Golden Bolt is pretty good, right? I mean, not amazing, but pretty good. The only part is about him not liking the game because Ratchet is mad at someone trying to kill him. So yeah, no cringe. But I didn't think it would be anyways. And later in Rack 1, he's like, I hope the Gadgetron help desk lady is cute, but she is a robot and also more interesting Clank. Yeah, that's actually pretty funny. Oh, man. I agree with that. Expressing basic fucking emotion makes me sick. Yeah, thankfully we have the Ratchet in the later games, who is basically just a flat piece of paper without any emotions.
Below him, but just as they're falling to certain death, Clank is able to think quickly and redirect their momentum with his thruster pack. They're still dead though.
Fucking goddamn it! This is the 5th time.
There's still one final dig that Ratchet's just gotta get in after all the progress he made as a person in this final act, as he thanks Clank, tells the robot, you'll be alright, and leaves. Obviously this last one's a joke, but man, this one always bugs me just as much as it makes me laugh. It's the perfect length for a heartstring puller of a moment. Clank looks genuinely devastated, and even when Ratchet comes back to grab Clank and offer to fix his arm, he calls him Tin Can. It's just, man, this is what they thought likable was.
Oh, come on! It's in character! I love me some plot synopsis. Yeah, that's kind of the skeleton of his video. It's just kind of following the plot and talking about stuff as it goes on. It's not the worst. It really isn't. Like, it's not Salt Factory levels, right? He does a good job of playing around with it, I think.
I hate this scene just as much as I love it. It's the perfect capstone to Mikey Kelly's voice performance as Ratchet and to this version of Ratchet's character, but in the same breath, the misdirection enhances the feel-good moment that comes afterwards.
And this little baby can take care of any
That's not a feel-good moment.
Too much trouble for you to
that right there is not a feel-good moment.
Allow me to demonstrate.
You can't call that a feel-good moment.
Yeah. Oh, mommy.
Turn it off! Turn it off!
No, not that one. But with that, we've got our actual credits roll, which, by the way, is organized alphabetically rather than by job description. This is, in my opinion, the best way to highlight every person involved in production.
Oh, hey, the actual credits.
Ego. I would love to see more studios stylize their credits in this manner rather than plastering the director's name 7 times in just
Quark on TV is not the feel-good moment for anyone but Quark.
Kojima. And this would mark the end of the first Ratchet and Clank game, if not for challenge mode. See, one of the reasons that this series clicked with me so much more than the other games that I was exposed to at this point in my life was because
hasn't had a right idea in his entire life.
In a way that nobody else did. I didn't get many games when I was a kid, so I had to make them count and make them last. And every Ratchet game had at least 2 or 3 playthroughs worth of content. What was an obligatory bonus for many developers was a key feature for this one. When you beat any Ratchet game, you're given the option of time warping back to just before the final boss fight.
I don't know, it's not that much of a key feature in the first game, much more so in the later ones.
All of your money, and in this case, some of the gadgets like the Map-O-Matic, the Persuader, which is kind of useless because
yeah, well, double negatives are
the
allowed.
Bolt Grabber, and the PDA. Although enemies and game difficulty aren't really tweaked that much in this game to adjust for all of your weapons and health upgrades, challenge mode here does give you a...
Well, okay. They're not tweaked, because all the weapons basically do around the same damage. which is kind of why I like the gameplay of the game to begin with, because it doesn't have the power creep that the later games have.
Couple new goals to strive for if you are a completionist. The big...
I feel Insomniac teased us by not showing what happened to Quark during the end of the game, aka on TV. Yeah, if they had shown us what happened, it would probably not be is it PG? PG-13? It probably would be like mature. Yeah.
One of these is expanded weapons. Once you get to Novalis, you'll find a teleporter right near the ship that takes you to a new gold weapons room. Here you can buy each of the game's 10 gold weapon upgrades for a combination of bolts and the gold bolts that you've collected so far.
Wait, what do you mean here? That's another gold weapon room. You can actually buy a few of these early in a secret room after you defeat Quark, but odds are you won't find it, and even better odds are you won't have the money anyway. Weapons like the Walloper, Taunter, Drone Device, Visibomb, and Rhino don't have gold variants, but the other 10 add stronger and for some reason green-colored effects and a beautifully tacky golden sheen to the weapon green
itself.
Because it's gold.
For example, the Glove of Doom will make the little robots larger and more powerful. The Tesla Claw will split into 2 lightning arcs and lock onto 2 different enemies.
Why is he not showing the Tesla Claw when talking about it?
And the blaster will fire bullets faster, and those bullets will bounce off walls. Getting every gold weapon will require an additional 260,000 bolts on top of that 150 grand for the Rhino, as well as finding every single one of the game's 40 gold bolts, making this simultaneously a completionist dream and nightmare since you don't earn that many more bolts in New Game Plus. Even better, the Persuader does not work for gold weapons. Getting everything in this game without...
You expect him to show footage relevant to his topic? Just pick a clip and let it go. Yeah, well, yeah, you're right. Honestly, for my next video, I'm just probably gonna play the game from start to finish while I space out my commentary so that the video is like 10 hours.
The hoverboard racetrack exploit will take you about 3 full playthroughs, and if you're going for the Platinum Trophy on PS3 or Vita, tack on another 2 playthroughs after you've done everything else, because there's for some godforsaken reason a trophy for accumulating 1 million bolts. I'll pass, thanks, I'm fine with the glitch. Additionally, challenge mode unlocks the goodies menu on the pause screen.
Yeah, what the hell is up with that trophy? That's
and
dumb.
More importantly, view the 30 skill points.
I kind of wish I had kept the Rack 1 pre-New Game Plus gold weapons only having upgrades hidden and kept it throughout the series. It would be more interesting. Kept them... throughout the series, right? I don't know about that. Don't do a playthrough for your critique. Do a critique for your playthrough. That's what's called a let's play.
Levels. Like in Spyro 2 and 3 before it, Insomniac snuck into Ratchet and Clank some of these cryptic proto-trophies to really add some fun bonus value. Many of these amount to destroying ships that are flying through the background of many planets, while others challenge you to get through areas with specific qualifiers, such as finishing the last part of Iridia's swing shot course without hitting the ground, or killing 10 GIMP commandos on Veldin with just the wrench, which I think is their kink. Others still make really creative use of the game's mechanics, like wearing the O2 mask against Blackwater City's poison tanks so that they can't damage you, and in turn so you can turn those tanks into chickens. And then a few actively hate you, mainly the skill point for finishing Blackwater City's hoverboard race in under 1 minute and 35 seconds.
What?
I've gotten so used to the timing on this one, having 100% of this game way too many times to count, to the point that
that's
the
probably
first
because I'm so
time
used
that
to
I
the timing.
this game 5 years back, I found out that you can actually get under that time threshold and still lose the race by less than 1/10 of a second, and if you don't come in first, the game doesn't trigger the skill point. That was
I can
not
probably
fun
do that
to learn.
without the booster.
But if you do everything, and I mean everything, you'll unlock some concept art, the game's commercials, a short making-of documentary, and a series of fun epilogue magazine covers that detail some of the events that take place in the months between Ratchet and Clank 1 and its sequel, Going Commando. The game may ask a lot of you if you want to do everything, but it more than rewards the players dedicated enough to go all the way. And that's part of why I hold this game so near and dear to my heart. For as many issues as the game had back in the day, issues that have only been magnified as time has gone on and the games have progressed and evolved, it's got so much damn heart, so much unique style that I can't help but love it. The biggest criticisms I have for Ratchet 1, between Ratchet's sometimes insufferable attitude and the game's lack of a satisfying strafing control or aiming scheme, were both issues shared by countless other players, critics, and even the developers themselves. It's rare that a game's issues are so universally understood,
I mean, just
so
because
easily
someone
fixable,
shares your opinion
and
doesn't
so
validate them.
immediately corrected for the future. But I think one of the most unsung issues here is that even after all of Ratchet's growth and the game's conflict forging an unbreakable bond between Lombax and Robot, we don't directly see much of that growth happen. By the time Ratchet and Clank Going Commando takes place, the duo are incredibly comfortable together.
I find the hardest rack 1 skill points pre-New Game Plus ship destroying skill points because you can't see which of them you have done or not. The others are melted in my brain and I get them automatic. After New Game Plus are easy because you can see it. Yeah, you're kind of not supposed to do any skill points before New Game Plus anyways. Did this guy really just say that glaring problems with the game being voiced by the community and recognized by the people who made it is rare? Did he? I imagine the game developers already know 99% of the issues in their game. I know, but I'm a sadist. Yeah. I mean,
But I think
the devs could probably think it's a good idea, right? Until they hear feedback, but like...
One of the most unsung issues here is that even after all of Ratchet's growth and the game's conflict forging an unbreakable bond between Lombax and Robot, we don't directly see much of that growth happen. Between Ratchet's sometimes insufferable attitude and the game's lack of a satisfying strafing control or aiming scheme, were both issues shared by countless other players, critics, and even the developers themselves. It's rare that a game's issues are so universally understood, so easily fixable, and so...
Oh yeah, he said that, didn't he? But... it's not universal.
Scheme were both issues shared by countless other players, critics, and even the developers themselves. It's rare that a game's issues are so universally understood, so...
But it's like, depending on who you ask, those aren't issues at all. I don't find them to be issues at all. The lack of strafing is just kind of part of the game. You just have to play around it. Like, it's not a problem unless you've played the later games first. Then you might think it's weird. And Ratchet's attitude in, well, like, 1/4 of the game is not a problem. It's a normal reaction anyone would have had if they were lured into a death trap by someone they trusted. Jesus Christ.
And so immediately corrected for the future. But I think one of the most unsung issues here is that even after all of Ratchet's growth and the game's conflict forging an unbreakable bond between Lombax and Robot, we don't directly see much of that growth happen. By the time Ratchet and Clank Going Commando takes place, the duo are incredibly comfortable together already, and we don't see that part of the relationship happen. It's a problem that many players feel surfaced far more recently, far after the duo were fully established together, and it traces back to the fact that Ratchet's rocky character work here is mostly paid off in one apology, one thank you, and one joke, with the rest being done off-screen afterwards.
I bring the negativity. Well, I mean...
Not that I really would want...
I appreciate you pointing out stuff that I missed.
To play through the duo's year-long victory tour, don't get me wrong. It's just a small and interesting casualty that came from course-correcting away...
Small and interesting? It's pretty damn big. It changes Ratchet's entire character for the foreseeable future. it sucks. That's what it does.
From this early, edgier Ratchet persona. Again, at the end of the day though, none of those issues have stopped me from loving this game enough to dedicate well over 100 hours producing a video exhaustively professing that love, no matter how conditional it may feel at times. I wouldn't waste the time critiquing and analyzing if I didn't want to raise the game up, to see the game portrayed in its fairest possible light, even if fairest here doesn't mean best or rosiest. And even then, I'm certain
it's not fair to portray a fourth of the game as bad because you don't like Ratchet's attitude. Well, maybe he wasn't, is basically the attitude, but it's like, I don't know, lack of empathy? All right, back to work for me. If you're still going on 4.5 hours, I'll be back. Otherwise, have a good stream. Thank you, Salty Shrimp Pasta. I probably won't, but, well, we'll see. Probably not, but thanks for stopping by.
Many of you will and have disagreed with me at points with my take because of your own personal experiences and your takeaways from those experiences. For example, I'm sure there's at least one person mad that I didn't mention that Poketaru and Veldon's musical themes for some reason have the same hook and undercurrent. Somebody else thinks I missed the fact that on planets like Orxon, if you come back later after finishing that level and killing all of the toxic crabs, the pterodactyl birds have moved in to fill that vacuum in the habitat, when really I just didn't have a good place to mention it until now. And others still have probably already mentioned the fact that
you can say that the second act of Rack 1 is bad in a way that the story somewhat halts a bit during some of the planets. Yeah, from a story perspective, I guess that's fair. But, like, it's always been more about the gameplay, right?
If you do some side flips in front of the hoverboard race girl, you'll give her lifelong back problems. That's the beauty of Ratchet and Clank, that I can sit here and talk to you about it for about as long as the runtime of the feature-length movie based on this game.
Oh, no, please don't. Okay, but
side flips in front of the hoverboard race girl.
What did he say?
Thinks I missed the fact that on planets like Orxon, if you come back later after finishing that level and killing all of the toxic crabs, the pterodactyl birds have moved in to fill that vacuum in the habitat, when really I just didn't have a good place to mention it until now. And others still have probably already mentioned the fact that if you do some side flips in front of the hoverboard...
Definitely the Rack series' main pull to me is the gameplay. Yeah, definitely.
Girl, you'll give her...
But it's like I'm still invested in the story because of the characters, right? And the humor especially.
Lifelong back problems. That's the beauty of Ratchet and Clank, that I can sit here and talk to you about it for about as long as the runtime of the feature-length movie based on this game, and you'll still come out of the experience having learned something about the game's development, or having had a good, entertaining time, or with your own disagreements, but hopefully a stronger appreciation of how damn great Ratchet and Clank 1 is, despite its flaws. No matter what, you'll come out of this with more to say than if you'd watched the movie, that's for sure. Don't watch the movie. You weren't going to. Nobody did, but just save the time, and if you're going to watch the movie, watch this video again instead.
Yeah.
And the best part, my absolute favorite part about all of my criticisms with this first Ratchet and Clank title is that next time around, with the next game, with a rare, perfect sequel, all of this love sure as hell isn't conditional.
What? A near perfect sequel? Are you kidding me?
Thank you so much for watching, especially those of you that actually sat down with popcorn to make it all the way through this. Words can't express how much I appreciate you sharing your time with me, your thoughts, your
I can't believe he thinks Ratchet and Clank 2 is a near perfect sequel.
My incredibly generous patrons who support this channel and my vision for
Same, the story is something for me too. There is a reason I watch Rack 1's cutscene while most of the other games I 50-50 on if I want to see the cutscenes. Yeah. I mean, it's like the only cutscenes that are actually good in Ratchet and Clank 3, for example, are the ones involving Quark, and that's mainly because they're funny most of the time. Like the in-game cutscenes are just so soulless.
You'd be surprised at
like you have to, if you want to watch good cutscenes, you basically have to watch the pre-rendered ones.
Hit that button anymore. I'll see you soon for Ratchet and Clank Going Commando, and until then, stay golden.
And that was the Golden Bolts video on Ratchet and Clank 1. Near perfect sequel is what most people think of Rack 2. I don't get it too much. Yeah, no, me neither. It's it's honestly not a very good sequel. Ratchet dancing and acting like Courtney Gears on Dax is amazing. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it has some moments, right? But for the most part, it's pretty soulless. Anyways, yeah. I don't know, I think it's a pretty good video, honestly. Even though it feels a bit misguided at parts. And this is probably gonna get content ID'd, right? And show up in his YouTube thingamajig that shows copyright infringements. And if you end up watching this, then yeah, I like the video. But it's like, yeah, like you said at the end there's some stuff I disagree with. But that's fine. Anyways, I think I'm gonna have one more short video if I can find it. If he watches this, Ratchet you seem chill, the Golden Bolt. Yeah. Let's see if I can't find. I think the JoystickDrummer actually wanted me to watch his trilogy analysis. But he's got like separate videos for all 3 games. So, and like the first one is just 14 minutes, so maybe we will take a look at that. Before we go. Yeah, sure. Just give me a second. All right. Waiting. Converting. I'm just downloading the video so that I don't have to worry about ads. I should really just buy YouTube Premium for this. Also give something back. I guess I'll actually watch it on YouTube afterwards, just so it gets the views and the view time. Oh, hey, Javon. If you want a newcomer's perspective, I recommend watching some Call Me Johnny's video in the future. I did watch the first one, and it's fine. But I haven't watched 2 and 3 yet, and I probably will. Because, as you said, it's a newcomer's perspective, and that's really valuable these days when you have a game, or a series rather, that's been out for so long. There's like basically no newcomers, and especially not as prolific as Johnny. So yeah, I'll definitely check that one out. Or those 3 out. But, shout out to JoystickDrummer on YouTube, who wanted me to watch his videos. That's cool. And that's in WebM? Why? Oof.
Pause it. As soon as I heard that glorious scream, I knew exactly what we were getting. Ratchet and Clank Rip a Fart is coming to the PS5, and when that
I shouldn't laugh at that joke, but here we are!
Opened up and I heard Ratchet's beautiful voice again, I felt like Cloud getting a hand massage.
Is this how you like it? How about this? Or maybe this?
This series...
What? Did he just fool me into watching porn? Looks like a hippie. Hey, don't be mean. Has been a part of my life
all the way since elementary school. When I would go over to friends' houses
is played on an emulator.
Spend the whole day watching them play it. This was right around the time when gaming started adapting towards twin-stick gameplay, which just meant everyone was given a gun and games started to become darker and edgier. It's not a phase, Mom.
Dude, I have hair like that, except it's a bit more curly and about the same length too. I myself have only played one, but I've never seen a series where fans are divided among the first three as to which one is the best. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It feels like the division is between 2 and 3, which I don't really understand because 1 is obviously the best one. I know hippies, not trying to be mean. I find them chill. Oh, okay. Don't worry though, I was just jerking your leg, pulling your leg. That's what it's called. Wow. First a hand massage, now jerking legs.
Mario was given a super soaker, Kratos was ripping people in half, and even cute little Jack was tortured so much that he learned how to speak.
Say something! Just this once!
Fucking bow down!
During this time period,
dude, hell
we
yeah.
have a dynamic duo known as Ratchet and Clank. And I can't think of a better character that shows off this period of edginess and teen angst more than Ratchet.
What do you know about me?
It's not a phase, Mom. See, I absolutely adore this series, and I've beaten the original trilogy more times than I can count. So with the new one right around the corner, I thought this would be the perfect time to make videos on the...
Oh, you sweet summer child. Actually looking forward to... Oh no. Oh no.
Whole series. Man, I can already tell the exact reaction you guys are having right now upon hearing this news.
Actually, that was probably in reference to Rift Apart, yeah. But it can't be the 2016. This is like a year old or something.
Elevates the game in one way or another.
But like, I just really like the thought of someone excited to play the, like someone who just loves the original trilogy, just really excited to play the 2016 remake.
You can traverse the stunning levels that each have their own unique aesthetic, and you have a plethora of insane weapons to use at your disposal. But the most crucial part about it is that it's actually fun to traverse the worlds and use the weapons. With it being the first one in the series, they had an overall vision of who the characters of Ratchet and Clank were, and their portrayal in this game is what I think of when I hear their names. They really remind me of a duo in a buddy cop movie.
I think you idiots are perfect. You're officially transferred.
All right.
That's great. Well, where should we report to?
Each of them excels in certain areas where the other struggles. Ratchet is stubborn, yet skillful as a mechanic, because he has never left his home planet. Clank?
Not having played Rack since the PlayStation 2, then playing the 2016 game, The Pain. Oof, yeah, the pain indeed. Like, imagine going, like, the hard cut between those two versions. I mean, it just kind of cracks me up.
Has robot intelligence, but lacks basic observation skills, because he was deemed as defective for being capable of thinking. Ratchet has the street smarts, and Clank has the book smarts. With these different personalities, they tend to work together well at first, but then it starts to break apart, only for them to become true friends at the end, just like every buddy cop film. This story starts
every buddy cop film
on Ratchet's home planet of Veldin, and the level is basically a straight line to a crashed ship. But it's there for you to get familiar with the controls and with traversing the world. We then meet Clank, and he tells us about the plan this douche has in store. Chairman Drek is the big bad villain of the story, and he plans to take chunks from each world in order to create a perfect planet. He is doing this because his home has been destroyed by toxic waste and overpopulation, and he's just plain evil. It's up to...
No, he's doing it because he destroyed his own planet with toxicity and pollution. Like, at least the fans had to endure the pain that is All for One and Q-Force. I know a lot of fans don't like the future games, but none of them are worse than Q-Force and All for One. What are you talking about? Earlier we agreed that All for One was the best Ratchet and Clank game in the series.
Ratchet and Clank to stop him, so they set off to the next planet, and this is really where they start to show off the creativity of each world. After you land on the planet, the only thing you know you have to do is find
Oh my god, he didn't cut to the credits.
Ship. You're in the middle of the map, and it doesn't tell you where to go, but instead, it allows you to choose between 3 different pathways for you to explore. This is what I love about the game. It doesn't tell you where to go, but you have multiple options that each lead to something interesting along the way. It gives you that rewarding feeling of exploration without the fear of going the wrong way and wasting time. At the end of each path, there is usually a prize, and it can be anything. It could be a new weapon or upgrade, a shiny
that's not the end of the
or
path.
most frequently, an info
That's
bot.
a gold bolt that's
give you a free
on the
preview
way
of
to
next
the end of the
planet
path.
that you can now start exploring. These funny cutscenes are what give the game its distinct humor style that I absolutely...
Yeah, you know what? I'm actually really surprised that the Golden Bolt didn't say anything about the cutscenes. Like, the only thing you really mentioned was Ratchet's anger. Right? Oh, I forgot. Sorry. I mean, we had such amazing games as those two. So the 2016 game was not a hard blow since we had God-given games within the last 5 years before. Yeah, exactly!
We adore. It really fleshes out the personalities of each character since there's no dialogue outside of these scenes. I mean, just look at this one. It shows us one of the first characters we encounter.
Dad, blast it!
Look, plumber's crack.
What did you just say?
I
said, look, the plumber's back.
All right, wise guy.
This plumber is trying to get off the planet you're on that is currently under attack, but he can't because of
socioeconomic disparity.
What? He hasn't got enough bulk.
Think I did the same exact thing in my video.
Luckily, he has an infobot that we have the pleasure of buying, and that's one of the biggest differences from other games. You have to actually buy the rewards after you find them. I'll take it.
He hasn't got enough bolts.
Shut up, Clank. The currency in this game is called bolts, and you have to collect a lot of them in order to get all the different gadgets and weapons. Now, this isn't a Pokemon game, because the currency is actually balanced to make sure you don't obtain everything all at once. When you get to a...
The fact I can quote like 50% of the cutscenes in Rack 1 shows I need to get a life. Well, if being able to quote 50% shows you need to get a life, then I'm pretty much dead.
New planet, and you see there's a new weapon.
Hey,
you
champ.
might not be able to afford it right away. You have to break some crates first, and the sound that they make when you go to collect them.
Oh yes, this.
Once you finally have enough bolts to buy the
boxes.
new weapon,
the sound
you
of
get this
boxes
cool
breaking,
animation
not really
to
the sound of
reassure you that your
bolts
purchase
being
was
collected. But
definitely necessary.
I understand what you mean. I get the drift. I catch the drift.
Wait a minute. Are you kidding me? The weapon I just bought only comes with half the ammo?
So, you gonna buy something or what?
I'm thinking about buying you a new face with my wrench.
Okay, so one more thing. I'm surprised the Golden Bolt didn't mention is the heavy focus on capitalism in the game. Because he did mention this. He did mention that you only get half of the ammo, total ammo capacity when you buy a weapon. But, like, he didn't draw the conclusion between this and basically Drek's greed and destroying planets to sell new ones. He didn't tie it all together because this really strong theme of capitalism and greed in these games. Maybe even more so in 2, but it's still very prevalent in the first one. That's also something I would like to see. Oh, I thought you were playing the game. No, I'm watching videos of people who have played the game and are reviewing them because of reasons. No, you don't need to get a life, man. Ratchet and Clank is amazing and based. Yes. By the way, have you ever noticed that the Rack series used for Rack 1 actors' death screams in the series until, if I remember right, a crack in time? Those were some damn good death screams, though. Calm down, bro. You still got the weapon.
I'm only buying the ammo this time, just because I need it for the next part.
Dude, the good thing about Ratchet and Clank 3 is you can just enter the arena and then die to get full ammo.
The weapons you can obtain...
That's like a positive thing about Rack 3.
This game are extremely unique, and they kind of had to be. There isn't a camera lock-on system in this game, so the developers had to be creative with how each weapon works in combat. For the
yeah, see, this guy has the right idea. He's not complaining about the lack of a strafing system. He's actually playing the game.
Smaller enemies that usually appear in groups, we have the Pyrociter, which excels in dispatching these foes at a quick speed. For the tougher enemies, we have the Devastator, and for everything in between, we have the Glove of Doom that shoots out...
No. The Glove of Doom is one of the worst weapons ever. How about FPS mode? Rack 2 and 3 has FPS mode. We don't talk about FPS mode. Because I've actually never heard of anyone ever using it. Like, not a joke. I've watched some videos, but like, never heard of it. Okay, I know Rack 1 has an FPS mode, but I meant like moving in first person. But that's like... Is that not an unlockable? I think you access it through the secrets menu, if I'm not mistaken.
These little guys. Look at him. He's so cute.
No.
Wait. Go on, little buddy. Come on, come on, come on. Yes! Your sacrifice will not be in vain. The game does a great job of mixing together both smaller enemies.
I feel like the capitalist themes of 1 aren't super compelling, maybe mainly because they don't really say anything about capitalism. No, it's more in the background, right? I have another plus on Rack 3, finally actually fighting Quark 101. What the fuck do you mean Gloves of Doom is good? No, it's not good. It's horrible.
And tougher ranged ones that really test your spatial awareness. You have to know who to attack when and...
Bruh, this isn't the Golden Bolt. The person doesn't come on scene and the guy sounds totally different. Yeah, I've already finished the Golden Bolt video. And like, this guy was actually in my chat earlier and asked if I could watch his video for some reason. And
it actually packs a punch.
Yeah.
It's not just a crappy starting tool that is only useful for the first few areas, but it actually does some serious damage that is on par with most of the weapons. These enemies aren't scared of you or each other, but they should be.
False advertisement? Well, you can always sue me, I guess.
These creatures and robots act like mindless machines, and they will kill anything in their path to get to you. It's your job to figure out which weapon to use where.
Yes, finally. It's amazing how this small YouTuber can get the game better than the big, mighty Golden Bolt.
And that's what really...
No, Glove of Doom sucks.
Keeps each combat encounter from becoming repetitive.
I will die on this hill.
One weapon that is kind of a mystery and isn't in the final version. There was a misprint on the box right here that just reads Entaray. This weapon was called the Gigantoray, and it was actually cut from the game, but it appeared on the cover art by mistake. Insomniac, please just let me hold the Gigantoray. Oh my god. It's beautiful. Oh my god. It's too powerful. No, no. The worlds you get to explore...
Okay, I'm too much of a dork not to find that funny.
...have so much personality to them. When you arrive at each planet...
Globe of Doom is fine, but I never use it. It has its uses. To be fair, it has some uses. But the reason I'm so harsh on it is because it comes back in Ratchet and Clank 3. And you can level it up, but it's so limited what you can use it for that it never really gains that much experience. And it doesn't get good until like level 3 or something. I mean, some people say Rack 1 doesn't have strafing, but that is entirely false, and many reviewers do point that out. It's the strafing is bad. Oh, you're like Sam with the N60 Storm. Well, the N60 Storm kind of sucks too. So, but dude, Sam actually likes the bomb glove, so that's right up my alley. The bomb glove is, after all, objectively the best weapon in Ratchet and Clank 1. But yeah, Ratchet and Clank 1 does have strafing. I'm also very like, okay, the Golden Bolt called this video the ultimate retrospective, but he never mentioned the jetpack strafing, did he? Yeah, it's just that the strafing is bad. But like the Golden Bolt didn't mention that either. So I guess the retrospective wasn't as ultimate as they claimed it to be. But yeah, they probably realized that they needed some kind of strafing, but they realized it way too late, and then just kind of threw it in there. And yeah, it really sucks. I would, if I could fuck the bomb glove, I probably would.
You get this beautiful zoomed out view of the whole level that shows you exactly what you're about to traverse. As you start exploring more
hey, come on, the bomb glove's good.
Let's say unique characters. Like Captain Quark, a bumbling buffoon that is somehow the star of the galaxy and will do anything for money.
Come to Al's RoboShack in Metropolis for all your robotic repairs. Al's RoboShack, it's Quarktastic.
You also meet this lovely German lady called Helga. She is supposed to give you the swing shot for beating the obstacle course, but instead makes you pay for it because life's not fair. But my favorite, and probably the greatest character this series has ever had, was this guy.
It's him, Skid McMarks.
That man from the Infobot.
In the flesh,
slight
the mess
disagree.
Skid Mark has found himself in perfectly demonstrates the different types of shitty situations that you have to rectify.
Yeah, it's a joke.
I will never write a sentence better than that ever again. Each world takes you in a different direction than the last, and they all have varying obstacles.
No, I'm fine with the bomb glove. It's just, I don't know why you find the idea of making a glove that throws bombs is funny. No, it was just a dumb joke.
Some have straight traverse.
It's not especially funny.
Sections. Most have combat sections.
He is a surfer dude, yeah.
Have puzzle-solving challenges.
I mean, if the blonde hair didn't give it away, then I don't know what would.
But my favorite sections have to be the grind boots and the magna boots sections. If you break these down to what they really are, you're just moving forward from point A to B. They make it entertaining by turning the traversal aspects on its head.
No, don't worry, champion.
With the magna boots sections, it's really simple. You can walk forward and swing your wrench. That's it.
No, I don't. Stop spouting lies in my live stream. Stop it.
It's just a fun way of making the traversal aspects a little more engaging, but you can
listen, it was supposed to be a joke, okay? I didn't want someone to actually latch onto it and keep it going.
Realized in this entry. What was fully realized though was the grind boots sections. These sections are even more visually amazing than the magna boots ones. You have to die.
Did he just call the magna boots sections visually amazing? Mommy, the internet men are bullying me! I mean, the bomb glove is like the only good Rack 1 weapon in Rack 2. The rest are just abysmal.
Dodge obstacles while also figuring out which rail to jump to next. There's even one part that has you hitting 3 switches in order to unlock an area that gives you the rare collectibles of the game, which are gold bolts. You do this while also dodging oncoming trains and jumping over or destroying the bombs that are being placed on the track in front of you. If you haven't done it before, it can be a little frustrating, but it shouldn't take you over 3 attempts to complete any challenge in this game. If you have trouble getting through a section,
I think we can all agree that the best weapon in the Ratchet and Clank franchise is the Pixelizer. Comment by... You shut the fuck up! You shut the fuck up right now!
You might run out of ammo if you don't use it sparingly, and that's what happened to me. Ugh. I'm gonna have to break my golden rule about not buying any ammo, but you better not say anything.
Let's go, buddy. I ain't got all day.
Calm yourself. I can't. It's that Ratchet and Clank 2016 rage. It keeps bubbling up to the surface whenever anyone mentions anything from the game.
There's one other part that these worlds have that changes up the gameplay, and those are the Clank traversal sections. Some planets can't be explored by Ratchet until you get certain gear, and you have to play as Clank in these sections. There's a good mixture of puzzle solving and combat, but they just aren't as exciting as the Ratchet parts, because you don't have access to any of his cool weapons. They are very few and far between, so you don't have to worry about them too often. Once you get the necessary equipment for Ratchet, you are then able to explore these places like normal. Having to go back to the planet and finish up what you started promotes exploration and really helps with...
The Tesla Claw in 2 is bad.
Giving you enough places to...
But like all the Gadgetron weapons in Rack 2 is bad.
This game offers so much variety with the different paths and planets that you can go to that it really helps it stay fresh when you inevitably go to replay it for the 10th time. Oh,
If you have an issue with the guy not shutting up, buy the Pixelizer so we'll shut up about it. But I don't want the Pixelizer.
Is that just something I do? Well, never mind.
I don't have the money for the Pixelizer. Maybe I'll just turn off the audio.
Near the end of the game, when encounters start to incorporate more enemies that shoot lots of projectiles at you, the game really starts to chug. It's a PS2 game, so I expected it to have some frame rate problems, but I actually
it's such a non-issue, it's a horrible...
Yeah,
but it's a funny meme.
Just to see how badly the frame rate would tank. Luckily, I couldn't notice the frame rate tanking on the final boss, which is what I was worried about. Douche Nozzle here is about to destroy Ratchet's home planet, so for the final level, we get sent back to the first world to finally put a stop to Drek's plans. And I forgot how hard the final battle was in this game, because it takes place across 3 separate battlefields. If you fail at all during any of these phases, you have to do the whole fight over again. And that can be extremely frustrating. Every time you die trying, you have to rebuy all the ammo.
But he asks so nicely. He's like, come and buy a Pixelizer. Most people have the money for the Pixelizers in the 2016 game. It costs almost nothing. I don't think the issue is the Pixelizer itself. It's just the constant bickering. Or, well, not bickering, but like he's constantly trying to get your attention. And it's like that in the entire game. Like, enemies just won't shut up. And then you just add the Gadgetron vendor guy on top of that.
That you spent during your last encounter, and you will drain multiple weapons during this fight. I highly recommend using my favorite weapon, the Tesla Claw, because you can get up close and personal, which really helps with telegraphing his movements. You can just continuously fire
I love
this
using the Tesla Claw and not hitting the boss with it at all.
The closest enemy, which is usually Douche Nozzle. Or, if you want to go into easy mode, you can just decimate him with the Rhino.
What's a Rhino, anyway?
Rip ya a new one.
What did you just say to me?
R-Y-N-O. Rip ya a new one.
This weapon just locks on, and then it's an easy victory from there. But the hardest part about getting it...
If you have an issue with the vendor guy, buy his weapon so we'll be quiet. But like, it shouldn't be like that, right? This is such a dumb complaint. No, but like, maybe you want to save your bolts. I don't know. The 2016 game is like a child you just want to hit when it won't shut up. I do not condone child violence. I do, however, find it funny. I do not... Me neither. I do not condone child violence either. I do, however, also not find it funny. Wow, Javon, why isn't your chats showing up on... Okay. I'm interested in knowing the development of Ratchet and Clank 2016 in order to understand what the fuck happened. The main problem with 2016 is that it's based on the movie. Enemies won't shut up? Kill them then! But yeah, the main issue with 2016 is that it's basically just based off the movie. So it just neuters all the characters. Drek is turned into a bumbling moron. They somehow got Dr. Nefarious to be the main villain. And like the story is just dumb. But the gameplay is okay. Murder is the fastest way to make something stop making noise, yeah. And yeah, it was also made in like a really short time frame.
Is its price tag due to
socioeconomic disparity.
Once you finally defeat Drek, you send him back to his planet he created, and you blow it up with the same laser that he was going to use to destroy your home. The blast from the laser knocks both Ratchet and Clank off the platform, which results in Clank's arm getting destroyed. They both end up falling to what they think is their deaths, but Clank swoops in to save them both at the last second. This ending cutscene makes it look like Ratchet is going to abandon Clank and just leave him stranded on that planet. The music starts to swell, and it really gives you that brief moment of, there's no way they can be separated. Can they?
Can they?
But then...
Hey, Tin Can!
I really find this criticism really stupid. It's a complete non-issue. You still talking about the pixelator guy?
And they lived happily ever after. Even though you know there's like 10 other games in this franchise, it still gets you to successfully second-guess yourself. The story is just that well written, and the conflict between the two of them throughout this adventure really leaves you wondering if they're actually going to stick together. Ratchet and Clank is my second favorite game series, right behind Zelda, and I can already tell that I have so many great ideas for my upcoming videos on this franchise. I just hope you'll stick around and want to see what I do next. This is my first video in my Ratchet and Clank series I'm working on, so if you don't want to miss any of my other videos, why not subscribe? It doesn't cost you anything. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and I'll see you next time.
Ooh, abrupt cut. Well, yes. Well... how should I succinctly explain this? It's not a stupid criticism, because it's not about how it's easy to make it stop, it's that it's there, right? And like it adds on to every other frustration of the game. The enemies not shutting up, because like you can go through the game and enemies will just talk and like come up with stupid quips and stuff. And then you might not have the bolts required for the pixelizer. It's been a while since I played, so I don't remember if that's actually possible, but, you know. And I don't think I think it's fair to complain about it. But like, it's not like it's like detrimental to the entire game. It's mostly just a funny meme. The fastest way to make everyone shut up in the Ratchet and Clank 2016 game is to take the game, turn it off, then either delete it if digital or throw it away if physical, then play a better rat game. 100% agree. The best way to make everyone shut up in 2016 is just not play the game. Yeah, that's an option too. The better option, if you ask me. But, like, the gameplay is okay, but I couldn't bear watching characters that I love be neutered like that. Why is that even an option? How about designing the game better where dialogue isn't annoying? Yeah, exactly. And you are right, champion. You shouldn't throw away stuff. Now, it's... Got a problem? Fine, don't fix it. It's not... It's... I have it physical, and while it's not my favorite rat game, I would not throw it away. Well, it's a piece of gaming history, for sure. I mean, it shows how bad a game can get when you play into general appeal, right? Because the movie is basically made as to reach as big an audience as possible. And it's also kind of dumbed down for kids. So when they make a game based on that movie, the option takes 5 seconds. But like, there should be an option to turn off just some of the dialogue. I mean, the optimal thing would be to have like a slider that just decides how much quipping there are. I hope the Ratchet and Clank games get a PC port of some sort. Well, Sony has been porting stuff to PC. Also, you can just ignore the voices. Eventually, it will turn into nothing. One plus about the 2016, it made more rack fans because the fandom was more stagnant before the 2016 since the PlayStation 2 game. Did it though? I mean, maybe. And like, we got Rift Apart, right? Which I still haven't played because I haven't recovered from 2016 yet. Also, I don't have a PlayStation 5 because I don't want to buy it for one game. Let's see. Well, yeah, anyways, this was fun. Thank you guys for joining me at the end there. It's been fun discussing and talking to you. And I hope you'll join me again the next time I do this, which is probably going to be next weekend. If you don't, I understand. But yeah, thank you all for watching. And see you later.